Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow underway across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us, however you may be viewing or listening to the show. You can join us on the YouTube page. Hit up OutKick there. Hope you'll subscribe to the channel, like, and join us in the chat, which is already rolling strong. Live from 6th and Peabody with EHA Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Big show planned. John McClain joins us coming up in about an hour and 15 minutes. Is Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, is he not? His agent says he is for mandatory minicamp. Meanwhile, Sean McDermott says he's not, and it's very troubling. We'll find out the very latest there and what it's all about and how quickly it gets resolved. A lot of discussion about the running backs across the NFL as well. Kurt Schilling joins us. He's back on the show today. Hour number 3. College World Series is set. High pitching totals for starters in the super regionals. A lot to discuss with Kurt across Major League Baseball. Always a great chat with him. That will be in today's final hour. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Big show today. They're all big.
That's right. Hey, we've got a big superstar now in the NBA. Another one. And this one is a no-brainer with Jokic, but, I mean, the back-to-back MVP from the last 3 years was a relative unknown, really, across the casual sports fan landscape because he's not on the national TV, viewing as far as what TNT and ESPN would put out there on a normal basis. And we're about to see more and more of the world champion Denver Nuggets moving forward. I thought top to bottom, the NBA really needed a solid, strong, outstanding playoff. They got it. Even though an 8 seed ends up in the final and you didn't have Boston and Denver go toe-to-toe like many thought would be the case whenever we actually saw the Eastern and Western Conference finals lock up. Chad, I thought the NBA really won this because I'm the guy that's not watching the regular season. Even the NBA players don't really start going hard until fourth quarter, and I've got the 3-minute rule. Tell me when the game's close with 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and I'll flip over in the regular season. They still need to earn that. But the storylines were on the court or in the locker room with trash talk. They created buzz with not just the play-in games, but once we got to L.A. and Memphis, and you had the opportunity to see what would happen if a guy wants to step forward and talk trash to LeBron James. That was entertaining. Then you have the Sacramento Kings who are a flash in the pan, but they had to go through what the Golden State has been able to create over the last several years, and they seem like they're an up-and-coming team that's worth following. And from the Eastern Conference, the 1 seed goes down in the first round, but the team that knocks them out ends up in the NBA Finals with Jimmy Butler taking over for the majority of the games that mattered. He didn't last night when it mattered, and that's why the NBA has not just a couple of good storylines, but they now have the face of the league moving forward in Jokic. He took over. 41st overall pick. A Taco Bell commercial was on TV during the NBA draft when he was drafted by the Denver Nuggets. And he ends up being a unanimous MVP for the NBA Finals. And he leads all players in the 3 main categories for the entire NBA playoffs. Jamal Murray comes back off the ACL. Michael Malone shows that you can have a strong voice in a locker room as an NBA head coach and lead a team from the bench. Fantastic job top to bottom. And they even got it right with Ja Morant and keeping the suspension low-key until after Denver had its moment. I think the NBA, they won. Denver wins, but the NBA won by having not just the number 1 seed, but the top to bottom best team. And what is the old school way of building this team? Win the NBA championship by a mile. That was the headline at SI. Denver wins by a mile, and they're right. Best team hands down, but the NBA had a really good playoff top to bottom, Chad.
The NBA won in this whole deal. I'm with you on all those points. One area they lost last night, that review on the Jimmy Butler foul. I don't know how anyone with a good conscience can come back and say that was a defensive foul worthy of 3 shots in that moment in the game. Jimmy Butler almost took over. He hit back-to-back threes and got 3 more points on that foul that was not, where he puts his foot out in a kicking motion to draw contact where no contact was made on him, and they reviewed it. And everyone on the ESPN ABC broadcast, Van Gundy is saying, well, that's clearly going to be overturned. And they come back, and even the NBA in cahoots announcers have to say, that's just flat out wrong. And I'm sorry,
but describe it.
All's well that ends well, and I'm glad the Nuggets won. It didn't cost them a championship. Mm-hmm. But in that moment, that could have cost them that game. And then that game becomes a Game 6 back in Miami, which could become a Game 7 to win it all. That's a huge moment in the game to completely botch. And while I think this has all been great for the NBA this postseason, you need to clean up your officiating and your review process, because just like Tim Donaghy, the moment you open the door to possible impropriety, you start to get questioned on everything. And I don't like to be too extremist on things, but I watched that review last night, and I tweeted it. My first thought was, they're rigging this to try to get more games because this series has been good and these playoffs have been good. I don't know how you look at that and uphold a foul call. On any planet, everyone who saw that said that is not a defensive foul.
Well, I'm with you on with the Tim Donaghy stuff. Everything's going to be questioned. They're the most transparent when it comes to their officials of the leagues, and in large part because of Tim Donaghy. But they have the announcement now at the broadcast table where they will tell not just the arena but the announcers what's going on. I don't know why that wasn't communicated. Beyond that, I don't think it necessarily changes the series. That one call, if they end up winning the game, what it did is change the line. It was Denver -9, so if you took the points and you're thinking Denver rolls, they were up. Miami went on an 8-0 run with, 2 minutes to go in that game last night to make it much closer than what it was even like down the stretch.
Well, look, it didn't cost them, which I'm thankful for, but it is the type of call that could have. And then you got a Game 6 on the road all of a sudden. If Miami goes on and has that happen, those 3 points are the difference, they win by 1 or 2, it could have cost the Nuggets the series. I'm glad it ended the way that it did.
I also think Miami didn't really want to extend the series, as crazy as that sounds. Butler takes a terrible 3. This is after they were going back and forth matching buckets. It was a very entertaining final 3 minutes. But they went on the 8-0 run, and then Jokic took over. Murray missed a fadeaway jumper. They get the rebound and the putback on the offensive boards, and then they come down and miss a shot. Miami misses a shot. Denver gets the rebound. They get fouled. They hit 2 free throws. I think they're up 3. There is a terrible 3 taken by Butler, and on the next possession, he throws the ball away on a steal. And with 25 seconds to go, they're down 3. Spoelstra calls timeout. They had one more possession where they missed the shot, and then they just didn't foul.
Yeah, they were down 5. I think they were down 5. There's about 15 seconds left.
They're just letting it play out. And
that was more of like people were joking about point shaving because they didn't want them to get to the line at that point. So they didn't foul the last 15 seconds to make it worse.
I just immediately thought, I'm like, well, they just know that they're not going to beat this team.
I applauded that because I think that Lowry missed that 3 with 15 seconds left, and they were down 5. So instead of fouling, Lowry immediately, and Spoelstra told them, they called a timeout. If you don't hit the shot, we're not fouling them, because Lowry missed it and extended his hand to shake his hand.
Yeah.
With about 15 seconds left, trying to go ahead and greet them and just let the Nuggets dribble it out, which – I mean, I get it. It's not what normally happens in a basketball game, but what would have happened was they fouled them, they go hit 1 or 2 more free throws, and the game is still over. Hats off to Nikola Jokic, who is now a different type of superstar. We've said that throughout these playoffs, but post-game last night, has the man even celebrated yet? He went and consoled every Heat player, shook everyone's hand, went out of his way to shake others' hands. We're seeing him now drink some champagne. I saw a Serbian dance party in the locker room also.
Yes, if he celebrated. I don't think he knows how. I mean, he doesn't know how to celebrate with champagne. He didn't know how to spray it. It's crazy.
It really is in a look at me world.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for Instagram follows or likes or clicks.
Yeah.
Here's Nikola Jokic, the best player on the planet right now, who has a hard time receiving any praise from anyone, goes out of his way to talk about how tough the Miami Heat were, goes out of his way to go and shake the hand of everyone on the Heat roster, Even a bench player who was walking off, kind of watching the celebration for the Heat, he went over some guy in his warm-up top and patted him on the back and said something to him and shook his hand. The post-game interview, he says, quote, "The job is done. We can go home now." And gave all of the credit to his teammates, all of it. I love this selfless quality. This is a lost art, not just in sports, in life, in entertainment for sure. It's a lost art. I listened to a podcast on the show Barry with Bill Hader. Bill Hader is one of my favorite celebrities because when you listen to this podcast, he goes out of his way to mention the name of every stunt person, every boom mic operator, every PA. When something comes up, he will give credit to someone for a scene and talk about how great of a job they did. And he will deflect credit to someone else. The greatest leaders that I've ever seen in any walk of life, they are quick to do that. Some of the smartest people I know are quick to give praise to someone else and give credit to someone else, and they deflect that. That is servant leadership at its best. And that's Nikola Jokic. And I admire the heck out of the guy. And I look at his comments about job is done, we can go home now, and there were some people saying, man, this guy's really, wanting to get out of Denver in a hurry. And I thought to myself, if I had a wife and child and brothers and sisters and everyone else with me in a foreign country, or I went to go, let's say I played basketball in Turkey, and I had to stay an extra 3 months to go win the Turkish basketball championship, I'd be the same way. Can I get back home to the United States? The man wants to go back home to Serbia. I understand it. Now, it's the NBA. He's playing in the NBA because it's the top league in the world. It's not an American going to a minor league in Turkey to go win a championship. But that's just how he's built.
Well, I know. He wants to go home.
He's done his job, and he wants to go home now.
Is he going to enjoy the parade on Thursday?
Doubtful.
No.
He's probably enjoying it, but he's just not looking like he's enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's so refreshing to see type of.
It's very genuine.
Yeah, it's who he is. I don't think that it's not false humility.
I agree.
He did get emotional last night on the bench at one point, yelling at his teammates. They had a nice close-up of him on the bench, getting as animated as I've ever seen when they were down 7 or 8 points about what he wanted done. But I marvel at this guy throughout these playoffs, how he's handled himself and just how unique that was. Every championship celebration, when someone wins their first, it is an emotional event.
Jamal Murray.
A celebratory event.
Jamal Murray last night.
Jamal Murray was great also. I love that emotion.
But that's what you're describing.
I'm not – Jokic not being excited about it is not what I'm praising him about. That's different, but I liked it. It was refreshing, and I'm sure he is excited deep down. It's that the first thing he did was go and tell the team that just lost in 5 games, great job. And then the first thing he talks about when asked about the championship, he's talking about his teammates. And Hutton, you're right. Then you go to the flip side of that. And when they brought up, Jamal Murray barely being able to walk a couple of years ago, and he starts tearing up, and the crowd goes nuts. That was a chill bump inducing moment for me to watch the crowd start going crazy and Jamal Murray's response to that. Very cool scene in Denver last night.
I watch Jokic, and I think with his ability to suppress emotion, if he played on the PGA Tour, now the Live, he'd win 30 majors. The greatest players on tour, like the legendary players, are able to suppress emotion in the biggest moments on the course. Jokic is able to do that. But he also takes over. Last night in the fourth quarter, but beyond that, he's the first player to lead all players in the postseason in points, rebounds, and assists. He's the lowest drafted player at 41 overall to win the NBA Finals MVP. And he did it unanimously. Total dominance, and it was throughout the entire postseason. And now the NBA has a star to market that is about humility, integrity, not the BS. And that goes back to the postseason. They already had a star. I'm not sure many people really bought into it because they just weren't watching him. Shaquille O'Neal watched him play in person for the first time. And it happened during Game 1 of the NBA Finals. That's crazy to think about.
Well, it's an amazing 2 days for Serbia when Novak Djokovic, it's hard saying both names back-to-back and not blending the two of them, Novak Djokovic wins his 23rd Grand Slam, and then Nikola Jokic wins the first ever NBA title for the Denver Nuggets in back-to-back days. Really cool to see that. Now, we can get into a whole big discussion about how marketable is the international star to an American audience. And a guy who is quick to say, which I love, he say, hey, the job is done. Can I go home now? Now I can go home. And he gets GTFO out of the United States immediately. How marketable is that for the NBA? I still think, even though he is a Serbian player, not just Serbian born, he's a Serbian. He's going to go live, his primary residence is in Serbia. I still think I would market the hell out of that guy if I'm the NBA.
Have to.
Everyone who has been, the NBA is always fixed and the NBA is woke and the NBA is this, and when they went all in on BLM and this and that, I was out. Market Jokic. And I'm not saying that because he's white. I'm saying that because this dude reflects the selfless, hardcore work ethic of a lot of Americans out there. They can relate to that. Can they relate to Ja Morant flashing a gun at a strip club? Probably not. A lot of Americans can relate to Nikola Jokic, who seems to just get his lunch pail, go to work, wins the game, and has zero emotion about it, and is ready to go home at the end of the day. I would go all in on Nikola Jokic and marketing the heck out of him if I'm the NBA. Hutton, I think, based on your opening, what you were talking about with this being a big win for the NBA this postseason, I think they're going to do exactly that. The days of no one watches Nuggets games or no one knows who Jokic is, those days are over now.
I mean, no one was watching the Milwaukee Bucks until Giannis showed up.
That's right.
No one's watching Golden State until Steph Curry's there. I just think we're late to the scene on what Jokic has done. We've seen him be crowned a guy without the climb, right? Now, he wasn't even the prince. And that even goes, that just shows you, I think the voters that voted him back-to-back MVP are correct. They're seeing this. But I think in large part the national viewing audience is just seeing him play for the first time on a consistent basis. That's not going away. You'll get sick of him before you end up missing him next time you see him. Coming up, you mentioned...
I love it. I'm all... And I was all in on Giannis, too. And I still love that guy. I mean, when the Bucks won it, that was a story you could get behind.
That's the point.
These are two guys that's so easy to root for, and yet, with their story, their background, and how. Yes,
Giannis takes the Supermax contract in Milwaukee. Could have done it wherever. Takes it in Milwaukee. So if you want to play with Giannis, you're not going to recruit him. You're going to go with him wherever he is, and that's playing for the Bucks, the number 1 seed in the East. Meanwhile, Jokic, he's not going anywhere. With Michael Malone as the head coach, with Jamal Murray paired with him. You went through the contract status. Yeah. It's fantastic.
I love it. Rob on the YouTube chat says, but other players aren't humble or work hard. He's boring. He's got a bad body. He doesn't speak great English. Blah, blah, blah. Don't see him being the face of the NBA. Yes, other players work hard. I'm sure other players have bad bodies, too. And there are plenty of players who don't speak great English. By the way, some of them from the United States that don't speak great English. But you know what he is? The best damn player in the world.
Who is this Greek Adonis that's in the chat right now?
The best player in the world is that selfless and hardworking and deflects to his teammates and gets along with his team the way he does and is a great coachable player the way he is. Market the hell out of it, because that flies in the face of what the critics of the National Basketball Association would say about the league. So lean into that. The diehards are going to be there no matter what. This dude will sell to your critics. And that is so important in sports, in business, in everything. If you want to sell to everyone, get your critics on your side eventually. The NBA can do that with Jokic. Now's their opportunity.
Well, the thing is, you don't have to sell him. That's the thing. You don't have to push some false narrative. Moving forward, I'm going to appreciate the people that are about honesty, integrity, and they're going to point to others first before they take credit, which is exactly what he's done. The NBA's done the opposite. Many businesses are exactly the same way. They're pushing the same BS. This guy's not. And I'm glad the NBA, you don't even have to lean into it. Just feature him. You don't have to fake it. I think that's the point. You don't have to fake the promotion and backing of an NBA player when you're backing Jokic.
This dude's the real deal.
Yeah.
He's the
and
genuine,
we're continuing to talk about
genuine
it.
oracle.
Even if it's
And
not on the
I
rundown,
respect
we're
it.
going to continue to talk about stuff like this.
I respect it.
Coming up, the PGA Tour, they're remaining in the news because now the government's taking a peek. Well, Jay Monahan, who leads all things PGA Tour and now works for the Saudis, he is saying that, well, the feds, the federal government looked the other way. They left us on an island by ourselves when we actually needed help. We'll dive into what he's all trying to sell now. Plus, it is Ja Morant watch season, and the NBA got this right too, pushing this to the afterburner now of the offseason as we await to find out what the suspension will be like for another NBA star. That's next on Hot Mic.
Tommy Lawrence said this yesterday, and it's so true. The average person, we can't do nothing about it. Like, people may say, well, that's great. I'm a Democrat. He's a bad guy, orange, bad guy. All right, but then it's going to happen to you, or it's going to happen to your guy. It's going to happen to your party. It is, because, look, the Democrats don't stay in power forever. The Republicans don't stay in power forever. And we got all this BS going back and forth. And by the way, the American people, us, nothing happens. It all goes unchecked. What's happening with the freaking Democrats and Biden, and you never hear any of it from the mainstream media, and it sucks. It's frustrating. If you haven't paid attention, I know a lot of you on this show do pay attention, but if you haven't paid attention, it's complete garbage, because we are losing. We, the people, are losing. We are allowing a president to whitewash his record and put his political opponents in jail. This isn't the United States of America. This is freaking Burma. This is freaking Jamaica. Drive down the street. Everybody's smoking weed here. Nobody gives a damn. There's no punishment for crimes. Guys murder, rape, right about 10 months, whatever. And now we're benching or putting away in jail our political opponents. Now, I wouldn't be so pissed off if somebody sat up at a podium, if Biden sat there and said, hey, look, this is why this is done. This is why this is done. This is how we did it. We're going to let a court decide, but this is what is happening because of this. But you know what? He can't do it. He has to say, well, no joke. I'm not lying here. I didn't have anything to do with it. I'm not lying. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Really? Why do you always have to say? Why does he always have to say? I'm not joking here. I'm not lying here. I'm not. All right. Okay. I mean, I don't know whether Biden took a bribe from the Ukraine, but I know this. If I was a Republican senator, I would say, I don't care whether I'm a freshman senator or the leading ranking senator or whatever, I would be pushing to find the hell out, and I would be incredibly public, and I would damn near demand whether or not they want to, and I'd be so freaking loud. But this is just crap. And Biden's taunting people. Where's the money? Where is the money is what Biden said about his $5 million. Well, that's kind of reminiscent of every freaking guy that gets caught. You answer a question with a question. Whenever somebody answers a question with a question, they are lying through their teeth. It's just frustrating because the American people can't get a single answer. We can't get any answers, but we see a guy that is under indictment, this guy, and that's it. We almost have an authoritarian dictator here. And we all supposed to sit here. We're all supposed to sit here and go, oh, well, oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, he's the president, he says. It's incredible to me that any human being in this country could allow this to happen.
6th and Peabody, our location with the beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. YouTube is where you can find the OutKick channel. All of the shows across the network available there, live and on demand. Coming up, John McClain joins us in a little under an hour. Kurt Schilling on the show today. His latest podcast, Kurt Schilling Show, available right now at OutKick.com. Hit us up on social media and in the chat, where we continue to talk NBA headlines in the chat. Ja Morant's going to be in the headlines soon whenever Adam Silver decides to announce the punishment that is forthcoming, and we accept it to be we expect it to be steep. I don't know if we will accept it for whatever it ends up being based on the number of games, because that's going to be the large debate here, is what's acceptable versus what is looked at similar. It won't be similar to the last suspension. 8 games was a breeze, and as was the drive-through counseling session he took in Florida. But I don't know what would be viewed as light versus heavy-handed. I think they should just come forward with a suspended indefinitely. Do it the way the NFL would handle a player betting on the game. Suspended indefinitely. And or the way the NBA, the NFL would handle a similar situation where the indefinite suspension doesn't mean a season. It doesn't mean it has to be half a season. It just means there are parameters set forth that must be, you have to stay within the parameters, the guidelines, the boundaries. And not 2 months later, after you have a meeting face-to-face with the commissioner, a similar situation arise. That, to me, is more important than just a number of games. I actually want to see him do well. And in order to get back into the league, if he really wants it, I think the NBA should just lay out an indefinite suspension where we will monitor to make sure that everything's going in the favor of Ja Morant and in the favor of him rejoining the league. Because that's what needs to happen. He needs to find some help.
Yeah, I mean, I think both's possible, where you could say punishment or suspension no shorter than 40 games with stipulations to return.
At that time, we will review.
It needs to be a half a season. Look, I hope Ja Morant gets the help that he needs. The NBA can mandate some of that, and hopefully all of that works. But Ja Morant's got to feel like he needs help first. And I've not seen any evidence that is the case with Ja Morant. And it is not the NBA's responsibility to rehabilitate him. It is the NBA's responsibility to look out for the NBA. And if Ja Morant wants to continue to make that max contract money he signed with the Grizzlies, he will have to adhere to the NBA's policies. Now, to not be completely heartless and not be disingenuous, the NBA should set out their policies to be something along the lines of it's not court ordered because he hasn't been arrested for anything, but league ordered therapy. There needs to be probably some community service involving gun violence or whatever you want to call it. There needs to be some of that happens with Ja Morant for him to get back to playing in the NBA. But I just don't see this as the NBA has to rehabilitate Ja Morant. The NBA needs to not look two-faced in their efforts to make sure that Ja Morant sees that he should make better decisions. But ultimately, this is on Ja Morant and who he has around him to do the right thing, to get better when it comes to this, and to get back to dominating. Because this guy is a great talent if he can play.
It is about how Ja Morant wants to approach this. But you better believe it's about the NBA whenever if they're going to allow him back in the league, to make sure that he's worthy of being back in the league based on what Adam Silver feels like is representable when you have an investigation not just involving Ja Morant, but the Indiana Pacers. It's more than just one player involved in the totality of it. This is not waving a gun in the passenger seat. This is everything involved. This is the manager down at the Foot Locker. Ja Morant represents the NBA while doing that. And what they can't just do is just move him aside and just continue forward and not expect for that to continue to happen. They've got to make sure if he's going to be back in the league at some point, and I think we all agree he will be, they're going to let him play again at some point, that he's he's more reliable than 2 months down the path of letting him back in or having a conversation where you're backing him to where you're back in the headlines doing the exact same thing again. And maybe that happens again. But what they can't let happen is for this to bleed over into something much more serious. And that's the path that we're on currently. They've got to derail and get a different direction going from what they're doing right now and how they've approached his discipline. And I think the only way to do that is to do the indefinite suspension and then allow him to show you whether or not he's on that path, instead of just waiting a couple of weeks and then saying, all right, let's try this again, which is what they did last time. And instead of a couple of weeks, it'd be a couple of months, and then we'll try this again. I think they have to be much more involved than just simply saying, bring us back a signed signature from your doctor.
Yeah, and I'm separating the Foot Locker or mall incident with the mom where he threatened the manager at the shoe store, and I'm separating that and the pickup basketball game at his house with a teenager punch and threats. I'm taking that out of the NBA equation.
They have to consider that, though.
They do, but I'm saying just for the Ja Morant defender out there,
yes,
and there's plenty of them. That's like, what has he done? It's illegal. These Republican representatives pose with guns, and 3 strikes already. Okay, and I'm taking those 2 out. From an NBA perspective, the guy was investigated for him and his crew putting a laser pointer on a gun, pointing it at another NBA team's bus. That's 1. The fact it had to be investigated, huge strike. 2, on a road trip to Denver, he's seen in a strip club with a gun after the laser pointer incident. And 3 was the latest Instagram live video with the gun. So for those that are saying, oh, well, half a season or a season sounds like it's too much, and I say he's already had 3 strikes. The next one will be a 4th. I could see some sort of, to go along with you have to meet these criteria to return after a half a season or a season, some level of probation from the league that if any gun-related incident happens in the next season and a half, you are kicked out of the league.
But also they've given for the those that are saying like, hey, what's he done that's illegal? JJ Redick has said this. He's already been handed the benefit of the doubt, even though I think like if this were a civil trial, and it's not a criminal case, but if this were a civil trial, it would be more reasonable than not is the conclusion you have to come with. 51% to 49. Well, the NBA came back after the Denver gun incident in the club and said, well, we couldn't prove that he brought this on the flight, that it was on a team bus, that it was his gun. He has a legal carry permit. It's not illegal to have it there based on that permit. And we couldn't prove that anything was taking place on NBA property, which includes the plane, traveling with it, and the team bus and the team hotel. But if this were a civil trial, wouldn't we say it's more reasonable than not that that was his?
Of course.
And it was taken to those NBA quote-unquote properties. So the benefit of the doubt, the benefit of the doubt was an 8-game suspension for that, and knowing that if this happens, it's like Chad, we looked it up. It's like a 50-game suspension, automatic, if that takes place on the team flight or on the bus. And guess what happened after the benefit of the doubt was given? They changed their travel policy, where they're not going to stay over an extra night in the popular cities.
In hindsight, too, Hutton, that 8-game suspension seems really light. At the time, I remember thinking, okay, that feels about right, and then he'll be back in time for the playoffs. That felt okay. But now if you see this other thing happen, it all feels way too light. Why? Because he immediately violated the trust of Adam Silver and the NBA after meeting with him after this latest incident so quickly. Mm-hmm. So now it felt like, well, that wasn't enough because that didn't get through to him. What will get through to him? And I do think it's a combo of at least half a season suspension. That is, I like the idea of making it indefinite to an extent. And you have to do this, and this before you're allowed to play again.
The other thing is, going along with this benefit of the doubt, is the fact that they treated the announcement like he was diagnosed with some terminal illness. Like he's away from the team. He's Ja is getting some things right. He's away from the team, and we'll update you at a further time. And it took 2 or 3 days before anything was even coming to light on the fact that he's down in Florida for counseling. And then before that story was even really discussed over a 24 to 48-hour period, he's flying to New York to meet with Silver. And before you know it, he's back in. And Silver's releasing a statement saying he felt that he was honest and contrite with him across the table from him, which wasn't true. He said he taped the interview. He had Jalen Rose asking the questions on ESPN. And he's back in the playoffs, just in time for the playoffs with the Grizzlies. And then soon after, we see what happens as the next series begins without the Grizzlies a part of it. It's just a trend, and it's going to continue unless the NBA is able to actually find avenues to where you can actually get his attention. I don't know what those. I'm not pretending I say I know what those are. But, you've got everyone from Charles Barkley to Lil Wayne that are trying to reach out to him. Pac-Man Jones admitted with Pat McAfee that he tried to reach out to him. Pac-Man was suspended for a full season. Yeah. Had to get back with Goodell before he was allowed to even be traded to the Dallas Cowboys from Tennessee.
Yeah, had to be vetted by the commissioner.
And that involved a shooting out in a Vegas strip club where a guy was left paralyzed. Point being, it's not just the league. It is Morant, and yes, he's got to be willing to, accept that he wants to actually change. But the NBA can't just say, well, it's up to Ja if he wants to change. They have to make sure they give so many different areas of influence to him. And there's so many guys, even in the league now, former players that are saying the exact same thing, and they see it coming too.
But if they do all that and he does all of that and he still hasn't changed because he doesn't want to,
right,
at some point it's no longer on the NBA.
Right.
It is going to have to be on him. Alib in the YouTube chat.
But real quick, let's say that happens after a 40-game suspension, and then, Ja didn't want to change, but they let him back in, and then a month later something else happens. They have to make sure that, because on the backside of what we saw from the last disciplinary action taken, we don't really know what he did and didn't do.
Yeah.
The NBA's got to make sure that they relay what he's doing or not doing in order to make sure that we're not pointing to some light discipline or some look the other way mentality, which seems to be what has happened in the trend over the past year of nothing but report after report.
So Alib in the YouTube chat says, athletes get so much slack for acting like morons that the rest of us don't get. And then people want to sit here and suggest we're being too hard on them. Give me a break. The only difference is the spotlight on it. You do something stupid and you're a celebrity or an athlete to this extent, then everybody's going to talk about it, and not everyone's going to talk about the dumb stuff that we do. But I'll put this into context for those trying to cut slack on Ja Morant or make false equivalencies. If I got mad at Davey Hudson one day, and he got in his car and left the studio, and I had a laser pointer pointed on him in his car, and OutKick had to investigate that and find whether or not it was a real gun and a real laser, well, it was a fake laser pointer, and I was just trying to intimidate him. And then I got written up for doing that, and everyone knew about it in the company. And then I went to a strip club flashing the same gun, when I'm on a company retreat. Then I'm not.
And there's a policy in place.
Yeah. Fox and OutKick don't care at that point. They're not going to send me to rehab. They're going to fire me. That's how most everyone is going to be treated in that situation. Mm-hmm. So do not accuse us of going too hard at Ja Morant. This is the way the real world would treat you in your job, wherever you're watching from right now, whatever you're doing. That's how you're going to get treated in this situation. This is not a one-time thing. This is not he's a legal gun owner and he's got a carry permit and he can do what no. This is a culmination of events that has led to this, that anyone else is probably getting fired from their job and not some option of, you know what, we're going to pay for you to go on a retreat and get right, and then you're going to come back and we're not going to care about it at all anymore. No, this is, again, I'm not even counting 2 other strikes, and this is already 3 strikes with guns against Ja Morant. So the league is well within their rights to lay the hammer on him But also, if you don't want to look like a hypocrite, make sure he's doing something to help himself during that time.
And from the first discussion we had on this, I said, like, I want to make sure this guy doesn't end up in prison or dead. And since then, Stephen A. Smith has said the same thing. Shannon Sharp is saying the same thing. I'm with them. And Barkley and others, they're all voicing their opinion, and they're backing not just the NBA policy, but whatever's headed his way suspension-wise. But what they're also agreeing to is there's more to this and the path that he's on, the trend that he's on. Skip Bayless with the segment with Lil Wayne, he's saying, like, I hope John Morant doesn't turn out to be one of those people you just can't save. But what I can't sit here and say is the NBA doesn't have a part in that for a 23-year-old that currently remains an active player in the league. And they let him back into the league even after the previous 2 times. So I do want to see what they lay out in detail instead of just some, he's getting treatment, guys. He'll rejoin the team when he's ready. It's got to be more than that. And for the first time, maybe in a while, we see a lot of current and former players that agree with the overall sentiment of the policies in place and the fact that we continue to see it from one individual. And I'm also not here saying that the other players don't have guns on them. They're admitting on social media that they're just not flaunting it. They're not putting it out there. And there are comments on that, too, as to why you wouldn't want to do that.
This is not an anti-gun stance. This is an anti-being an idiot with a gun stance, especially when you've had other gun-related problems as a player in the league. That's what we're talking about here.
Monopoly. That's what we're talking about in the PGA Tour with their alliance with LIV. Saudi money, the impact. We've got now the government looking into the funds coming in, and the fact that the PGA Tour is saying, hey, the fact that Saudi money's been around is exactly why, and the fact that it's been so influential is exactly why we had to take this deal and this unifying agreement. We'll look into what Jay Monahan is saying this week compared to last week and last year. That's straight ahead right here on Hot Mic.
My primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number 1 pet peeve, telemarketers. Number 2 pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number 3 pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number 4 pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you gotta keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that.
I believe in it.
Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
And people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Glad you're with us. We've got John McClain coming up in a little over 30 minutes. Plus, we have Curt Schilling on today's show. That will be in today's third hour. Always a great convo with Curt, the Curt Schilling Baseball Show, available now at OutKick.com every Tuesday and Friday. 6th and Peabody, our location with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, it's going to be a newsworthy and noteworthy week out in Los Angeles. Los Angeles Country Club, U.S. Open, things tee off on Thursday. News is going to continue to trickle out and maybe even more than that, maybe pour out based on the fact that players are arriving, the media is arriving for the U.S. Open, and all of the discussion will be about the PGA Tour and LIV and their alliance, their agreement, their unifying stance now. A year after, you had Jay Monahan and the PGA Tour waving the flag, pointing to the patriotism and the Saudi money, the blood money that was being poured in to the game of golf. And June 6th, PGA Tour announced that they had a new entity that was being formed with Saudi Arabia's the wealth fund, the sovereign wealth fund, the PIF, joining with the DP World Tour. Well, now you've got Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut, who sent the letter to Monahan and Live Golf that said PGA Tour's agreement with PIF regarding Live Golf raises concerns about the Saudi government's role in influencing this effort and risks posed by a foreign government entity assuming control over a cherished American institution. PIF has announced that it intends to use investments in sports to further the Saudi government's strategic objectives. We've always known that, and what we're now hearing from Monahan is, hey, this type of money has been pouring into things other than sports, and now we're seeing in sports, to where the policies that are in place for this money to even trickle in, flow in, pour in, led us to where we are now, to where we either had to join forces here or we were done, based on the political gaming that goes on, the judicial gaming that was going to continue to happen and bleed the PGA Tour. But I found this part interesting, Chad, from Andrew Brandt, who was a sports agent, a general manager, and now in the media, and covers a number of things, mainly the NFL. But in his newsletter for this past weekend, he says this: my sense is that the PGA Tour knew or was advised that, one, the Live Tour, funded by the $600 billion wealth fund, was not going away. The mutual antitrust lawsuit, not scheduled for trial until at least 2024, that was going to present uncomfortable discovery issues for the PGA Tour. And here's where it all, I think, lies. And that's me adding this in, not Andrew Brandt. But he adds into this. The discovery would show how the PGA Tour magically found money for $20 million purse escalations, which came about over the past calendar year, and the fact that they have the nonprofit said, the not-for-profit status currently, which is another thing that Blumenthal wants to look into. But without a doubt, the Saudis bought golf, because keep this in mind, because I think they were selling the fact that you have Liv, who was they weren't the majority stakeholder, right? So based on how everything is written, they get the Live Tour will decide who gets to join the board and when, and who they want to invest into the Live and PGA Tour in this new entity. So they're the deciding body on that. So if they want to fund more into the overall new entity that they're creating, they're in control of that. So they're running golf. They've bought golf.
Well, and Jay Monahan, said it the way I know you've talked about it a lot, Hutton, is, hey, this private investment fund is investing in tons of American businesses. Mm-hmm. We're just the latest they've gone after, so we eventually just played ball like a number of other businesses have that have been invested, taken their money in investment and capital, and we're now just doing the same. So there's so much to still learn about this whole story, and my big question is, what does this really do to golf as we know it in the United States, and tournaments as we know in the United States, and what the majors look like, all of those things? My guess is, from the common fan's perspective, it's not going to mean much. There's not going to be a huge difference in the quality of the golf or the way the tournaments are played or anything else, but we're going to find out, just like we have. This is going to be a slow bleed of information now for months on this story about why this happened and what's next.
John Rahm is saying he feels betrayed. The PGA golfers feel betrayed. They should. And they know that the PIF is now the sole investor in the PGA Tour, and they have the right of first refusal on any other future investors. Coming up, Georgia football and the trend.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Glad you're with us for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. John McClain coming up in about 20 minutes. Kurt Schilling in a little over an hour. 6th and Peabody, our location with Hot Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Get into Deion Sanders talking NIL. Mike Gundy, he's not going to negotiate name, image, likeness contracts. And UCLA, well, there's something that happens whenever you join the Big Ten. The travel numbers are going to be.
And football's the smallest part of it. You know, I mean, that's the crazy thing about joining that conference. Think about the volleyball team.
Yeah, think about having 20 Seattle Seahawks franchises that you have to travel across country.
Baseball season looks a lot different now for your UCLA Bruins.
Numbers there. Let's start, though, Chad, with Georgia football and the culture problem by the numbers. We have detailed the traffic incidents and certainly the ones that took the life of a staff member and a player back in January. It's much more than that. We even went with, arrested or graduated, and many of those are traffic-related incidents.
By the way, it was a very difficult game to play.
Yes, it was.
We did not fare as well as I thought
Now,
on graduated or arrested Georgia football edition.
So the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has done a deep dive on the University of Georgia's football team and the speeding issues that they have. The numbers are alarming. Under head coach Kirby Smart, dozens of players have been cited for excessive speeding, reckless driving, a lot of it's racing, or just other traffic offenses. I do want to preface this by saying I don't think this is the only football program that would have this issue if you had media dive into details. I also don't think there are many programs in a town like Athens where just across the state of Georgia, and we've pointed this out, they have made it a big effort. It is something that they are trying to crack down on, racing, street racing. And so they are citing left and right traffic violations. And I don't know if that's happening, in other just big-time college football cities, towns. With all that being said, I would have never guessed it was 300. 300 known traffic offenses, including multiple high-speed accidents, multiple DUIs. You have one game missed by the offender in this. 82 separate legal matters in this reporting. Chad, four different violations of speeding for over 100 miles per hour, and one of those took place in a 35 mile per hour zone. And my guess is that would be racing. But this is more than just a trend. This is troubling. And while I don't think it's just at Georgia, what we do have is the media deep dive that we're not getting, and we really haven't seen, because in these, I'll go back to, we used Jameis Winston for the longest time. In Tallahassee, were they really looking for Jameis Winston?
No, none of these small towns are. Now, and again, this didn't come from the Athens paper.
That's right, I know.
Came from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
But a lot of the violations are taking place in Athens.
Yeah.
And that's my point.
Again, I'm making the point for you. The local people aren't going to do this. This was not the Georgia football beat writer uncovering this. Why? Because these programs, especially in the South, they run the city. And you're not going to get any access, and no one's going to like you if you're the one to break bad news about the two-time defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs football program that we all know they have a culture problem. We could see it, and it led to deaths, but this is just the evidence of it, and it is a culture issue off the field with Georgia football. Now, Hutton, you know this, I know this. No one cares. No one cares at Georgia. Why? They won 2 straight national championships. You know when they're going to care? Lose a couple games this year. Have a fall off without Stetson Bennett. And then people will start saying, it'll start from the outside, and then if you lose enough, it'll begin to crack on the inside where people are going to say, aha, now remember all those off-field issues and all the racing and everything else going on? Kirby Smart maybe doesn't have a handle on his program, but not going to happen until they lose. And I'm looking up and down their roster right now and their schedule next year. They're not losing anytime soon. Not to any great extent.
Well, and the question is, what is Kirby Smart doing behind the scenes whenever these issues take place?
Apparently he's got a handler that's handling all the legal matters.
But, how exactly he punishes them is unclear, right?
Yeah, to me, that's the key part of the report.
Handling the legal matters is one thing. Handling the punishment, handling things internally, that's okay. But the report mentions, in one case, in 2019, he ordered 6 players who had been arrested over the previous 6 weeks to run steps at Sanford Stadium in front of a select audience of donors that were there for an event for the Georgia Athletic Department. That's just not enough. Maybe there's more. Maybe there's more than that. But that was part of it. I mean, that's the perception. But, on the college football world, especially on the large scale, the disciplinary matters, they can just point to the university and say they're handling it, and we're not going to reveal any disciplinary action that's being taken. I think in this case, it's reckless to just ignore it. And now everyone's got at least, maybe it's not a magnifying glass, but at least the attention is turned to the program instead of relatively just going in it incident by incident. At some point, everything piles up, and it's more than just a court fine that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and what's the guy's name again? Gant. To me that's the key
handler.
takeaway from the whole thing. I think 82 or over 80 legal matters handled by Gant, who's the same player, described as the player babysitter. I mean, I'm doing some further digging on that. If I'm another news outlet or if I'm AJC, I'm getting some more information on that, because that's the one that could be very, very bad for Georgia football and Kirby Smart. The other things, while bad, I mean, over 300 traffic violations, that's handled by the court system if you're getting a speeding ticket or whatever. But vaguely 82 legal matters handled by one guy who's described as the program's babysitter, I'd do some more digging on that one.
You know, they're going back to 2015 as part of the AJC investigation, where you've got the excessive speeding, you've got street racing, but beyond that, players illegally bringing weapons on campus, bar fights, domestic violence and sexual assault. I mean, there are a litany of things, even back to 2015, and they go back then because that's whenever Kirby Smart took over as head coach. That's not to say that this is only taking place at Georgia. It's taking place across college campuses for sure, but this is more than just one or two street racing incidents. And by the way, I mean, the magnifying glass is on the one street racing incident that claimed the life of two people, including a Georgia staffer who was behind the wheel and a teammate, a Georgia player of Jalen Carter's, teammate of Carter's. So, I do think it's more impactful because you have that story that everyone is aware of, and then you have the investigation from the Atlantic Journal-Constitution that's digging in on this.
There are times where you can come back and say, oh, this happens everywhere. This is just a college sports thing. This is something that happens everywhere you go with big-time college sports. This is not one of those stories. This is not happening everywhere. Is it happening to a smaller degree almost everywhere? Sure. I'm sure there are plenty of college football players at major programs that get traffic violations. Is every program having over 300 with 82 of them handled by an in-house babysitter / legal handler? Are people dying on the streets because of racing cars at other programs? No. And this is something that it's time for Kirby Smart to put a lot of money, by the way, all of his money that he's been making from all the winning, put his money where his mouth is and do something about it. Because the fans are going to cut you slack as long as you continue winning, but it may not stop the media reports of what's going on, and hopefully it stops people breaking the law and death from occurring also within the program. So this is a troubling story. This is not just, I mean, it's something that can be fixed by Kirby Smart, and ultimately people are going to care about the wins and losses with this program. Those Georgia Bulldogs fans will. But I'm not just looking at this and thinking, oh, it happens everywhere. This is just college sports. Boys will be boys. Nothing to see here. This is not one of those stories. No. That's a crazy amount of numbers we're talking about with these traffic issues. So it's something they need to clean up.
And it's right in their backyard. It's not like they're going home to Florida. You know, I just use Florida as the example because that's where Alabama had the recruit, right, that was coming in that was arrested for driving 140-plus miles per hour with, weed and, I believe, a loaded weapon. Turns out it was the passenger's weapon, or at least he copped to the weapon that was his, not the recruit. But, yeah, I mean, this is happening right there in Athens. When we were there, I didn't really think there was a lot of I didn't hear a lot of racing going on.
No, we didn't.
We were downtown.
Yeah. We didn't see Vin Diesel or anything.
A lot of construction, though. It would be tough to drive through.
No one was hopping ramps, or doing any Fast and Furious stuff while we were there. Those happened on the side streets. We were just in the downtown sector of Athens, so we didn't see all the racing take place.
Deion Sanders is taking over all things Colorado football. He's going to be taking over your TV screen this fall, especially for the two weeks to kick off the season on national TV on Fox against TCU and Nebraska. He's also steering a narrative on, he's not anti-name, image, likeness, he's anti-collectives from across the college football landscape. He says, NIL, not a problem. Collectives are. He's telling this to Joel Klatt. Let's talk about NIL, name, image, likeness. What kid out of high school that is notable enough that a CEO or a major company is going to lay it on the line for that kid that ain't nobody know? So it's not name, image, likeness. He's pointing to collectives. You could be, Tom, Dick, or Harry, or Larry and just put a bag together, boosters or whatever, whoever does it, and try to solicit these kids to come to your university. He says, who is that helping? Then Prime gets into, I want my guys to earn the Lamar Jackson bag, not the NIL collective bag. He's pointing to the NFL money that he is saying that he will develop you into. That's also what he was doing at Jackson State, too, when he's recruiting at a high level there for the level of program that they were recruiting at the HBCU, and recruiting against and pulling in big names. He's in the living room along with a family member and a player that had just hosted Nick Saban the night prior. He's the head coach at Jackson State. So I believe him when he can send this message and land recruits. What we will see, Chad, is can he recruit away from the universities that have these big-time collectives? Because that's with the transfer portal. Is he going to stir the pot by getting guys to jump and go to Colorado based on this messaging? Or are guys going to stay where they are and not join him because they're making more money where they are? And they have the national significance and the pedestal at the Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson level. And will we see that take place at Colorado? Apparently not when it comes to the collective.
There are plenty of good players to go around. So Deion Sanders, he's going to get his, just like Ohio State's going to get theirs, and Texas is going to get theirs, and USC is going to get theirs, and on down the list. But if you don't have a full arsenal at your backing when you're going into recruiting, there are guys you're going to lose. I mean, we can talk about mindset and everything else, and there's going to be that talented player that you really want, that guy, he's into some other really good programs, a lot of tradition, and he really likes the coaching staff at multiple places. And maybe the deciding factor for him is going to be a highly organized collective that can tell him up front, these are the deals we've done for past players and recruits of your ilk, and here is what we can guarantee for you. Here's what can happen. I'm not saying that's right or wrong or that's the meaning of collectives or NIL. It's not. It's not the intention of it. But if you want to get and be in the living room with every player that you want to possibly bring into your program, you got to be okay with losing out on some of those guys if you're going to badmouth collectives and talk about not wanting them around or not utilizing them, because some of the best programs in the country that are getting some of the best players, they have highly organized collectives. Now, what you don't want is what I like to call Aggie disease in their recruiting class. They sold too much NIL. They sold too much from a collective. They sold too much from a guaranteed money perspective. And what they ended up getting were a bunch of dogs that didn't really want to be there, that wanted the check, and they didn't recruit to the culture that they wanted. You got to have a balance. If I'm a coach, Hutton, at one of these programs, all I ask, I don't want to be heavily involved in collectives or NIL. I don't want to be involved in those negotiations at all.
No.
If I'm a college coach, I want to make sure, though,
but you're involved,
that I'm not losing out on everyone because it's coming down to me and one other guy, and they really like our culture and our family atmosphere and our practice setup and our win-loss record from the previous year, and our coaches are recruiting the hell out of them, and they like them. But I keep hearing, Coach, I got to go over here because I've got $85K guaranteed freshman year. That's going to balloon to $400K a year by the time I'm a senior.
Yeah.
And that's what they're telling me. If you hear that enough, all college coaches don't want to be involved in that. But guess what they do want? They want the ability to offer that too through someone else if that's why they're losing out on players.
But you
and that's where we keep going back in a carousel about let's get some legislation on it and make it fair all the way around. That's what they ultimately want.
Yes. And Coach and senator, we call him Coach because he said we could. Coach Tommy Tuberville will be on the show with us Thursday to discuss legislation and what took place on Capitol Hill last week. But, Chad, even if you're a coach who doesn't want to be involved, it's at the top level. If you don't want to be involved in the NIL negotiations, Mike Gundy's saying the same thing. He's saying, hey, I don't want to be involved in this. I don't care what feedback I'm getting. I don't want to deal with a line outside my office with people coming in here to negotiate money. I can't do that. I won't do that. And he goes, it's just not going to happen at Oklahoma State. Okay. But you have to be involved if you're the coach at some level in the negotiation, because if it's an even negotiation monetarily, why is one player going to choose one program over the other? It comes down to either the coach and the line to the National Football League, or it comes down to immediate playing time, and especially at quarterback. But it's going to happen at other positions too for taking the money. So the coach has to be involved in that negotiation. If the player's going to come in, take the money. I don't want to know, hey, just come in here and play. Well, and you're going to lose them immediately to the portal if you're not involved in it and you don't want to play them immediately, because you're going to have to deal with the boosters and the collectives anyway, because those are the people now that are going to be, at least at a handful of programs, it's not rampant across college football, they will be saying, hey, we got to play this guy, because if not, or so-and-so paid big money to allow him to be here on campus with us, we got to put him in the game. That speeds up the process for the coach.
So Allie in the YouTube chat says, it's silly to think you can't criticize the structure of college sports without losing the type of recruits you want. None of this is 100% universal across the board. Deion Sanders can say what he wants, and he might not lose out on the type of recruit he wants. I'm simply stating that there are going to be some top-level recruits that have a lot of options, and some of those options may include money. And if they can get everything they want at a program and extra money, they're probably going to take the option with the extra money. So you may lose out on them. Hey, good for Mike Gundy for standing on his principles on this. I'm all for it. Just understand that when you do that, you're going to be recruiting from a pool of players that aren't getting offered money anywhere. And that's typically a less sought-after caliber of recruit. And if you're okay with that, and that's the only type of player you want in your program, and you can out-coach them, and you can coach them up, and you can compete for titles with those guys, by all means, go and do it. Mike Gundy's not a guy who's ever recruited top 10 nationally consistently either way. So he's not in the game with a lot of these high-priced NIL players.
Well, but hang on, though. T. Boone Pickens is also dead. And he was the de facto owner of Oklahoma State Athletics.
Right.
And would he be singing a different tune if T. Boone Pickens were alive?
I don't know, only because it's not like Oklahoma State is a recruiting juggernaut.
But you don't have to be. You can just pay money.
Well, I'm saying they've never done that. Like even at their height, if you're so principled that you're like, I'm not going to deal with a collective, I'm not going to offer money, great. Then try to win at the same level. I think some of these coaches are saying, I hate the top level of the sport that's doing this, and I don't have the resources for it. So
that's the issue.
I can go get the guys that aren't going to be relying on money and still be good. And it goes back to my initial point of there's plenty of good players to go around. You're just going to lose out on some of the top ones. Just understand that when you go in with this stance.
And also through the portal.
And if you're okay with it, great.
Well, how about so just the other end of the discussion here is Trent Dilfer. Deion is saying, hey, I'm worried about the NFL bag, not the collective bag. Trent Dilfer, now the new head coach at UAB, is telling On3, hey, we're not competing against people in our conference in the transfer portal. We're competing against schools that are coming in that can offer $400,000. Should I, as the head coach at UAB, even try to offer $50 to begin with if the player's good enough to make $400? And then here's the quote. Why do you even try to retain that player? If you develop a player and he's good enough to make that type of money at a program that would be perceived up from us, economically for sure, well, as a player-centric coach, isn't it my job to encourage him to take that money if it doesn't hurt his chances of making generational wealth at the next level? And therein lies the kicker. So he's playing hey, if I'm a player's coach and I'm looking out for what's best and he's really good and he's going to the next level, and he's a sophomore entering the portal, and a year from now, he could get hurt here, he could get hurt in Athens. But a year from now, he's going to enter the NFL draft early, and he's going to make a boatload of money. Who am I to say that he shouldn't take $400,000 now and go to Georgia if he's going to the NFL a year from now anyway? That's a completely different take and spin, and it's refreshing to hear from a college coach saying that, specifically at a program that he's taking over that's a 500 deal. He's going to lose players as he develops them.
Note to self and show, we need to get Trent Dilfer on
I'll
the show.
text him right now.
A buddy of ours that we're close with. That's a good one to talk about this whole deal because he will talk openly about all of it. Then I love that stance from him also, and I love the honesty. Hutton, going back to the Oklahoma State deal, top 5 programs right now in recruiting for 2024 class.
Okay.
This is according to On3. Georgia's 1, Ohio State 2, Alabama 3, Clemson 4, Michigan 5. Let's all go into the assumption all of those programs are doing okay from an NIL perspective and what they can offer players, okay? Oklahoma State, with Mike Gundy's principled stance of, I don't want to deal with the collective. Great. I'm cool with that, him saying that. They're 48th in recruiting. They're behind Kentucky and Illinois, 1 spot ahead of Iowa State and Indiana in the recruiting rankings. But this is sort of a typical Gundy class. I don't know that it's going to affect him that much because I don't know that they were ever fully in the paying players game. T-Bone Pickens did a lot for the program from a facility standpoint and from retaining coaches like Mike Gundy, who would recruit or would flirt with a lot of open jobs to get a raise at Oklahoma State. T-Bone Pickens had a lot to do with paying coaches and facilities. I don't know that they've ever been big in the paying player game.
I'm only bringing his name up because they could be if T-Boone Pickens wanted it to happen, right? And then all of a sudden Gundy would be all about a collective if it was the Pickens collective.
But I think it also just comes back to sort of, plausible deniability. Like, whatever.
Well, it's not offered.
I'm not going to tell T-Boone Pickens to not do what he wants to do, but he can do whatever he wants. And, hey, if we happen to get a 5-star quarterback because of it, so be it.
John McClain is waiting in the wings. We can't wait to chat with him about the NFL news today. Stephon Diggs, is he there in Buffalo for the mandatory minicamp? Is he not? His agent's saying one thing. Meanwhile, Josh Allen and Sean McDermott are saying he's not. It's confusing. Plus, running backs right now talking a big game. And I guess they're in an echo chamber. We'll get John's take on why it's not going to work. That's next on Hot Mic.
We show up in 1993, the year the Phillies went to the World Series. I arrived in June at 8-1 with an ERA right just over 3. A couple complete games. I'm leading the league in wins, and I'm thinking Baltimore next month is the All-Star game. Can't wait. From June 16th to July 11th in 6 starts, I went 0-5 with an ERA, and this is not a typo or a mispronunciation, an ERA of 10.31. And a 2.21 walks and hits the innings pitched in 26 innings over 6 starts.
The innings pitched were what surprised me, Kurt. Your career, there's 7s, there's 8s, there's 9s.
Yeah.
In that stretch, there's 2.1, 3.
Yeah, it was by far the worst. And it happened for a couple of different reasons. Number one, because I had I lost the ability. I was on the mound, and I was literally afraid to throw the ball over the plate. For me, a strike was going to be a double. It was terrifying. And I remember a sleepless month. Managed to get back on track and finished the year 16-7. We went to the World Series and stuff like that. But this stuff happens. Sometimes it happens, like for me, in over a month, a couple of bad starts. And mentally, I got into a place. And basically what happened was Darren Dalton called me out at the end of this, and the media confronted me about it. And I had to get up and dust off or lay in the dirt. And I chose to get up and dust off. This guy has zero confidence. He's on the mound. He doesn't. It's literally challenging because you don't want to be out there because you don't feel like you can compete. And I'm sure I'm not probably telling you exactly what's on his mind, but I'm giving you a ballpark of what is going through his mind, I think. Pete Alonso homered, hit a 448-foot home run, and then was recorded yelling towards Bryce Elder, who threw it. Throw it again, please, throw it again, in reference to the right-hander's hanging slider. Bryce Elder said, I mean, if I hit one on the concourse, I might holler too. Braves got the last laugh, however, in the 6th inning when they rallied for 4 runs, take the lead for good. See, the other stuff I don't care about, but if you're going to talk directly to me, I'm drilling your ass. That's I might not be the next at bat, but you'll know it's coming, and then you'll be nervous until it does. And I don't care if you're a polar bear or whatever the hell you are. I'll take my chances. Because
interestingly, on Wednesday, the day after this, he got hit on the wrist in his first at bat with a 97-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah, and well deserved. You're going to be an idiot. You deserve to get things done to you that represent your idiocy. You can do the whole bat flipping BS and the whole slow trot stuff. You know, that's so what? You want to talk trash? All right, that's fine. We'll and as a pitching staff, it clearly wasn't the pitcher who he yelled at that drilled him. But I'm protecting. I'm defend. You know that there's no place for that. You know, but this guy's part of his whole shtick is being a showman. So, you know, if he thinks that's showmanship, then he's going to wear it often, as he should.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with EHA Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Pleased to be joined by John McClain, who joins us weekly. He's covered the league for nearly 5 decades, and he's seen his fair share of great players through the college ranks that, I mean, Chad, let's face it, they were probably getting paid. We just didn't have a collective name behind it, right? John, I want to get into the NFL headlines in a brief moment. You heard our discussion towards the end of the last segment on Dion and then what Dilfer was saying at UAB about, hey, who am I to stop a guy? He's going to make generational wealth at the next level, and this isn't going to hurt him from doing that, this being moving up in the ranks in college football. Why should I try to even stop him? What do you think about Dilfer's comments at UAB?
I thought Trent's a realist. And boy, that's if I was a player and UAB was a chance to go there and play for him, I'd want to do it because of his NFL experience, but also for common sense about the way college sports is operating today. And it's not just UAB that would be a farm system for these other schools. These big state schools, especially the ones that perennially do well and recruit, they're going to get more money from their alumni. USC is another one. You know, USC, I can't remember what they paid Caleb Williams to go out there with Lincoln Riley. And so it's Baylor, where I went to school. Baylor loses guys. Baylor's lost players, good players for NIL money at bigger schools. And so it's a racket. It's not supposed to be able to offer NIL money recruiting. They do it. They cheat just like they cheated for decades, and now they've made it legal. And I feel sorry for the schools that are not among those perennial national championship contenders. How many do we realistically think have a chance to win a national championship this season? It's probably going to be a handful, and I bet all of them have spent a lot of NIL money luring prospects from other programs.
Chad, he mentioned Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is reportedly making around $2.5 million at USC, and that in part is through Fanatics. He's got a deal with Fanatics that was facilitated, and now a deal with Neutrogena.
Nice.
That puts him on three, saying a value of around 2.6.
John, one other quick college football question for you. When you got talking about that, it made me think about it. The SEC tomorrow is going to announce their 2024 schedule that will include Texas and Oklahoma and their 8-game schedule. But the SEC is requiring a 9th game that is against a Power 5 opponent not from the SEC. Do you think that the Big 12, even after being spurned by Texas and Oklahoma, will be quick to try to get back in the game of playing one of those two schools at some point in a non-conference setting? Or is the bad blood going to be so bad that they decide they can't play them?
Well, since they've beaten up Texas for years now, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But Oklahoma, it was great till Lincoln Riley left. So if I were UT and Oklahoma, I'd be afraid about scheduling games against the former conference because they'd be extra fired up. And so they'd be smarter to go in another direction. I think it's kind of like getting back with your ex-wife. You have no use in doing that when she's left you for a wealthier guy and better looking guy like the SEC would be. And the Big 12 is going to get along fine with their TV deal, and they don't need the Longhorns and they don't need Oklahoma. I miss Texas leaving. By the way, that loss the Longhorns had to Stanford last night.
Wow.
I'm a Baylor fan. You guys know how I feel about Texas. I felt sorry for the Longhorns. The Aggies felt sorry for the Longhorns because it was unprecedented for anything I've ever seen. But I don't think you're going to see that, Chadlack. And I don't really think that Texas especially wants to take a chance on getting beat by Baylor, TCU, Houston, one of those teams that they used to play a lot.
Yeah, for those that didn't see, Stanford won against Texas on a walk-off. But what it was, 2 outs facilitated this. 2 outs, everyone's running on contact, pop-up, middle, right center field, gets lost in the lights. No one can find it, and the ball falls on the grass, and
tough.
And Stanford wins. John, let's head to Orchard Park, where Sean McDermott is saying that Stephon Diggs is not there, and it's very troubling. Josh Allen is saying something that he hopes it's going to be worked out soon. Meanwhile, the agent is saying not only is Diggs at mandatory minicamp, that he's met with the coach and the general manager. Why the confusion on both sides here? And if it's a sit-in like we saw with Jeffrey Simmons last year or others this year, why not just say that instead of allowing the back and forth all morning?
He just signed a new contract last year for $99 million. I can't imagine why he would be throwing a hissy fit to try to get a new one. And they said he had a physical, but there's a lot of confusion here. And it's all about what the head coach and the general manager think. And the agent said he came in for a physical, so there's something up. And when there's something up, it's usually about money or possible rehabilitation. I don't know if he had an operation that people don't know about, but it's strange, very strange.
Something to keep an eye on for sure. Speaking of Diggs, and just the wide receiver money that we're seeing, okay? And he's at a different stratosphere. But we did see Odell Beckham Jr., who's now in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. Saw the photo of him taking the field today. He's making $15 million in this first season with Baltimore. DeAndre Hopkins is making free agent visits currently. He's reportedly, he was here in Nashville. He's on his way to New England, and he's reportedly briefly going to swing by and talk with Green Bay. You know and have covered DeAndre Hopkins. Money always talks. Let's say that first. What else does DeAndre Hopkins want? What's he looking for, John?
Well, we know he's not looking for a Super Bowl contender based on the teams that we've seen him show interest in. Before he was cut, he was talking about Super Bowl contenders with great quarterbacks, and the teams that he's shown interest in are none of that.
Maybe it's the teams that are showing interest in him, though. I think that's also part of it.
It could be, and they also got money. Now, I'll say this: he should want the familiarity of Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly. They know him very well. They were with him for 4 seasons, Kelly longer than that. So they know he doesn't like to practice, but he plays in games. You know, he hadn't been great for 2 years, but there's been a reason. And when he came off his suspension last year, before Kyler Murray was hurt, he led the NFL in receptions during that brief period. And he's never been about speed. His game's always about strength and great catches and fighting for the ball, route running, getting off the line of scrimmage. So if he's lost a step, so what? He never had a step like all those Blazers do. So I think he's going to go where he gets the best deal financially. Maybe New England overpays for him. I thought there's no way he and Bill O'Brien would be reunited, knowing how bad the blood was here. A lot of it never came out. But that would show time and money heal a lot of wounds if he ends up with the Patriots. But Bill Belichick, he likes his guys to practice. I'd love to see how that one goes. To me, if you put him in a Titans uniform, and Burks ought to make big improvement between his first and second season, Hop would help Burks so much. And I know and I'm a big fan of Hopkins, know him well. I'd love to see him play twice a year against the Texans. And the Texans, of course, want him anywhere but the AFC South.
John, do you think Dalvin Cook is going to get the close to $10 million that he wants from an NFL team as a free agent? And what spot makes the most sense for him?
Well, Miami makes the most sense because he's from there. He played at Florida State. He had a really good year. And the guy that's taking his place, Madison, I think it's Richard Madison, that guy's under a lot of pressure to produce. But you got to figure the Vikings know what they're doing. And so Cook, Cook may want a multi-year deal. And he's not going to get a multi-year deal being a running back. So if he wants to go for a team that's the best team, he would go to Miami. Denver's not interested. I could see Hopkins getting paid before he does the kind of money he wants. Hop supposedly wants $10 million a year. I could see him getting it, even though he's older, because running backs get beaten up. Man, for 1 year, maybe 2, I'd love to have him on my team.
How about the running back discussion right now that's taking place with Joshua Jacobs and elsewhere, where Cook's wanting top money. Saquon Barkley is throwing out Le'Veon Bell's name as a possible, hey, I could sit out the season. These guys can't do that, can they? I mean, and let's just say, and let's treat this like Dilfer, and they need someone to just say this. Saying this in minicamp and saying this in training camp is totally different, and missing the game checks at a position, John, where longevity is not known for being one of the qualities of playing running back. Don't you, especially on the tag, you take the $10 million guaranteed and sign on the dotted line by the deadline, which is what, July 17th, and you take the $10 million in the bank. You don't sit out that year.
All that big talk doesn't mean squat. Le'Veon Bell admitted recently made a big mistake. Came back, he was not the same. Now he's trying to be a boxer or MMA or something. He was a great two-way back. He didn't get what he wanted. He sat out his season. It's hard to get that back. Trent Williams did a great job after sitting out, but it's easier for a tackle than it is a running back. And I think he knows he made a big mistake. And that's not going to happen to these guys. They'll sign. They'll be there. It doesn't matter if they don't like that money. So what? Come back, be great. Force them to tag you again.
Yep. And I do wonder, what happens to the position moving forward because of the money. And I don't think they're ever going to climb out of where it's viewed right now monetarily based on the talent that's there at a much cheaper rate, even for the first-round picks. But, for years the debate was about, the offensive tackle tag was the same as just an offensive lineman tag, right? But the different positions that were valued more. Are you a defensive end or a defensive tackle? Are you a wide receiver or a tight end based on how the team uses you? The running back position, and I understand their overall point. I'm just saying I don't think they win the argument based on the way the CBA reads and the tags that can be applied after the rookie deal. John, they're right in saying the tag keeps the overall number down on the percentage for them to use it again. They're not going to overpay, and it's never going to go up. I agree with what Josh Jacobs is saying. I just don't think in principle he nor Saquon Barkley can sit out a year and actually think it's going to have that great of effect on the team.
Of course, you're not going to sit out a year. It's a moot point. If you're like Bijan Robinson, you get drafted first round by Atlanta, they're a guarantee of having you for 6 years if they want you, 4 years, and you do the franchise tag 2 if you don't reach an agreement, a long-term deal. Problem is, if you get a long-term deal, they're not going to give it to you because they don't last that long. There have been backs that in the past that have played very well, carried a heavy load. But the way the game is today, you play 17 games, you get hit a whole lot by bigger, faster players. And so I think it's all the best backs. Now, there's some that are different, but most of the time, your first and second round picks are your best backs. And there's a difference. Second round picks, you got to redo their contract after 3 years, and you do the first round picks after 4. But if you get 6 years after first round pick like Bijan Robinson and he stays healthy, you should be happy with that. I mean, they're going to have a coaching change in there. They'll have a general manager's change in there. But so the back will generally outlast the coach and the general manager. But you can't get one and think you're going to keep them for 10 years, and they got to be realistic with their agent.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Here's why it's not going to change, Chad. The CBA and this new the players, when they're negotiating with the owners, they don't care about what the agents want, and they don't care about the rookies. They don't care about the guys in college that are coming in. They want the veterans to get the money. That's how the new CBA was structured, and so everything's slotted. So it's not like you can be a first-round pick in the NFL at running back and negotiate a better deal. You just have to take what's slotted your way, and then the team's in control of you for up to 7 years if you're a first-round pick, which is not going to change anytime soon, which is why if you're a great, phenomenal player, you take that guy, I think, in the first round because you own the contract that's relatively inexpensive for 7 years, not 4.
At the end of it.
Yeah, then you rinse and repeat, right? That's how.
Somebody should go back and look at the greatest backs in history, the Hall of Famers, and see after their 4th year, if they back then they'd gotten tagged 2 years or 3 years, and see how it would have worked out with them when the philosophy of running backs was different, when everybody had to have a great one, and they basically were runners. They were not receivers. And when you had one who could catch, you're like, wow, this guy can catch. That's even better. But by and large, they were going to be runners. And I think it'd be very interesting to see how many of them say 6 or 7 years in, we're still great.
John, final thing for you. This $1 billion innovation that's being discussed in Jacksonville. They're trying to play in Daytona. Is this the negotiation that ultimately will determine if Jacksonville's in London or Jacksonville?
They're not going to build a new stadium there without a guarantee that from the NFL. I mean, the NFL is going to want to guarantee they're not moving. They go every year. They're London's team. Now they're putting games in Germany, which is just as big a fan base as England is. But I think if they get this stadium, he's going to have to sign an ironclad lease. That means he would not be moving. And they would expand, but the problem is there are not enough good quarterbacks to go around. And when it comes to quarterback play, it'd be more like the USFL or the XFL, and they don't want that. There's just not enough right now because colleges are not producing them, or they're not doing a good job of developing them, which includes coaching. But I'll believe the Jaguars doing that when I see it, because the NFL at some point is going to Europe because there's too much money to be made. Whatever they sell a ticket for in Jacksonville, they sell in Wembley Stadium, 85,000 tickets, Hotspur Stadium, Tottenham. They can sell close to 80,000, and they can charge a whole lot more money.
John McClain, NFL columnist, Sports Radio 610 as well, and Pro Football Hall of Famer and a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector. John, thank you as always. We'll catch up soon.
Well, you're going to catch up with me live and in your studio next week. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys.
That's right.
Can't wait, John. Looking forward to it.
Heading into the weekend.
I look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, John, thanks,
John.
John McClain there. Chad, coming up, Charles Barkley starting a new show with CNN. And
they're off to a great start.
Well, I mean, his comments on what to expect from the show is exactly why I love Charles Barkley. That's next on Hot Mic.
My primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers. Number two pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number three pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number four pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Charles Barkley, while he was building up the countdown to vacation, which I thought was hilarious, on TNT, and then on NBA TV with Shaq. And they kept adding like an hour to it on the countdown.
Well, he got some golf in with Peyton while he was in Denver. I know he kept talking about that, and I saw the photos.
Well, so coming up, he's got a new show with CNN and Gayle King. And here is Barkley on TNT on set describing the new venture.
You don't need to go take that news job. You can come on our show. You know more about hockey than we do.
Hey, definitely.
You don't have to travel out of Atlanta.
Apparently, with this new talk show, I'm jumping on the Titanic. So it's not. Everybody keeps saying abort, abort, abort. So no, you know what? I'm looking forward to it. Gayle is awesome.
Yeah, I love the. I mean, he's not dumb.
No.
You know, he knows what's going on with everything digital and what CNN has not been able to do. And, of course, all the criticism that heads their way. But here's the thing. Charles Barkley can say anything he wants to. And he's going to make headlines. He's going to give his honest opinion. And that's what you want out of him.
Well, it's exactly why CNN brought him on. And
it's
why,
a lot
why
like
people
McAfee.
love him.
A lot like McAfee with ESPN.
It also reminded me of when Chris Jericho came back to WWE and came in immediately and said, "I'm here to save your failing brand," where the ratings are dying throughout. This is Charles Barkley stating, "I'm here to save you, CNN.
Abort,
this is
abort,
why I'm here.
Abort.
I'm here to save you." He's putting the expectations out there right now. I'm jumping on board the Titanic, but if anyone can save CNN, maybe it's Sir Charles.
Yeah, and back in February, he said that CNN was a blank show, crap show. He said, "I just want to help the company because obviously it is a blank show right now. Anything I can do to help." He will. He will.
I think he will too. I will watch the show. I'm curious enough with Charles Barkley on it to see what it's like.
Look, I mean, he's able to be honest with people even if he disagrees with them, right?
Yeah.
I enjoy the way Barkley approaches that manner. It doesn't have to be an argument, and it doesn't have, speaking of blank shows, the clickbait crap out there too. You don't have to stir up controversy with Charles. He's going to combat it head on, and he's not going to take the opinion of someone in his ear telling him what to say or what to talk about. That's what I appreciate about Charles Barkley.
I will check it out,
and
we'll see if he can save the Titanic.
Well, if not, he'll be one of the few lifeboats.
Yeah. Well, if not, I mean, he'll just go back to his highly successful NBA show.
Well, he's not leaving that either.
Yeah, no, I'm saying he's going to be fine. If it's a failure and it's done in 6 months or a year, he can say, "I gave it a shot, and now I'm back to the other thing I'm very successful at."
Champions.
Nothing to lose for Sir Charles.
Champions are the Nuggets. He's going to be spending more time in Denver because the Nuggets are about to hit the national radar even more so. Winning their first title last night, and Nikola Jokic assumes the throne of the best player in the league right now. We detail that and more next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick, the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent.
and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here. Tuesday edition of Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls
Show
on.
is flying by today.
Yes.
Flying
That's the way we
by.
like it. Kurt Schilling joins us coming up in 20 minutes. A lot to discuss. We've got some headlines out of the College World Series and the postseason. We've got the team set, but the pitch counts, a big discussion on social media and among baseball fans and coaches and media members alike. 164 pitches, 154 pitches over the same weekend for the same or two different players. Get Kurt's take on
Didn't you know
leaving a guy in.
The pitches you don't count in college? They only count when you get to the majors.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Pitch counts. It's nothing to see here in college. Only in major leagues does it matter.
It is amazing though to see these guys work longer than 6 innings. I'm saying that now.
Look,
it's jarring. For I'm not turning on any college baseball game, but when I do, I'm like, oh, this is the starter. It's the 7th. It's jarring to me now, having watched Major League Baseball now for the last 15 years.
We'll see how their careers go, but I'm here to report none of these players are dead.
No,
they're all still alive.
They said the same thing.
They're
Their
still
arm
alive.
is attached.
They continue to have a functioning arm after pitching 164 pitches. So the science is in. They're alive. They still have a pulse. We'll see how Major League Baseball responds. More importantly, we'll see how Kurt Schilling responds to the questions of pitch count coming up a little bit later.
That and DeGrom and others. Well, we've got a lot of topics to hit coming up. We've got a new champion in the NBA. Denver Nuggets, NBA champions for the first time, defeating the Miami Heat last night in Game 5, winning the series 4-1 with the best player, Nikola Jokic, dominant. The first NBA player to, in the postseason, lead in all 3 main categories, points, rebounds, and assists, unanimous MVP. He's the lowest draft pick to ever go on to win the NBA Finals MVP. 41st overall was his selection. ESPN actually broke away from coverage, and they were in the middle of a Taco Bell commercial when Jokic was announced as the Nuggets' second-round pick. And he turns out to be a two-time MVP and now NBA champion to go along with the MVP award, where there was not even a discussion to be had about who was up for that honor. He was not just great, but exceptional night in and night out. Because, Chad, even when he was getting 24 points in a game, he would dominate the offensive end by facilitating the basketball to others that were taking over. An amazing passer on top of everything else that he does.
In Denver, he is the sun, and everyone orbits around him. That's how the offense functions. Regardless if he's putting up a ton of shots or scoring a bunch of points, everything orbits around Joker within that offense. I think everything should function around and orbit around the Joker when it comes to the NBA. You got a special superstar here. And what I mean by that is he's unlike almost every superstar in any profession because he's not one to give himself all the credit. He's not one to try to do something for social media likes or for clicks. He is someone that's all about the team. He's someone that's all about building relationships with his teammates and giving credit where credit is due. What a novel idea to give credit where credit is due. This man just won his first NBA Finals last night, his first championship as an NBA player. He's a two-time MVP. And instead of falling to the ground in tears like we've seen in the past, of jumping in the air, jumping up on the scores table and celebrating, he walked over to the Miami Heat players and he greeted them one after the other. And he didn't start a celebration then. He told all of them, great job. And he consoled them. And then he went and did his interview. And in the interview, he said, the job is done. We can go home now. Talking about his family. This is a superstar unlike almost any other in sports. Are there other NBA players who are selfless and are about the team? Absolutely. But he's the greatest player on the planet currently. And this is all that he is about. Not about himself. He's about the team. He is about winning a championship. But when he wins that championship, he goes and tells the team he just vanquished. Nice job. Good effort. And then he goes back to talking with his family and talking with his teammates and not going crazy. Hutton, you said it earlier, he'd be a terrific golfer because he's got that mindset and he's so even keel. The NBA should go all in on Nikola Jokic being their focus of what this league could be. He is a superstar, and I hope they market him as such.
I mean, consider if he was on the PGA Tour and he had this mentality to just drown out any of the drama and stay this consistent in the big moments, pressure-packed moments. He won 30 majors. I mean, he's that type of guy. It takes that quality to reach that level. It's something just to be a 5-time major champion. You know, there's a different threshold there that you reach, that you obtain, and that we've seen from recent young stars across the PGA and now LIV. Jokic is now on that. He's now on the national radar, and he's a guy that didn't really mind not being there despite being the two-time MVP.
And for the American sports audience, yes, I get that he's Serbian and English is a second language. You can hear that every time he does an interview, and he's talking about it's time to go home now. He's not talking about going to a rich suburb of Denver or going to live in Boulder. He's talking about going to Serbia. So he is a European guy, a European player. And I can understand we can have a conversation about how marketable is that in the United States. Here's what's marketable about him as we see pictures of him right now. The dude physically is an everyman. I've got people in the YouTube chat saying he's got a bad body, and I'm thinking that's part of his appeal, though, to most people, is they look at him and it's like, this dude is the best basketball player on the planet? Really? I mean, yes, he's 6'11", almost 7 feet, but I think that's part of his appeal, is that he has sort of an everyman, workman-like quality about him that most average Joes out there can relate to, and it's cool to see.
The other thing that's good for the league here is that they've gotten through this entire playoff run with a lot of quality, just the coverage was about basketball. I'm viewing because it was about what was going on the court, not off of it. And the drama off of it was trash talk that facilitated more eyeballs for what was a very entertaining postseason run top to bottom. But they end it by having already crowned their star, their former MVP, again, back-to-back years, and it doesn't win it this year, but was in the conversation. And he's the best player in the league, and that's great for a league that has a lot of great talent over the age of 30. He's 28 years old, right?
Yep.
If you just start rattling off the top players in the NBA, all of them are over 30. Many are over the age of 34, 35 years old. And I think it's important for the faces of the league to get younger. And that's why, Ja Morant at this time last year was the talk about being the next guy. And now we have Jokic taking over not just the crown of the NBA's best player, but he's the present and the future. And for a league that has Steph Curry at 35, and, even Jimmy Butler is 34 or 35 years old. Kevin Durant's 35. LeBron James is 39. You've got all of these different stars that are still stars, but at some point, the age becomes a factor. And Jokic is there to take over and do it at such a dominant level. It's not a fluke.
And now it's time. He's on a path to be one of the greatest of all time. I'm not going to put a number on it, but let's say top 5, top 10, all-time player. That's where he's headed. It's a chance for him now to go be great. I brought it up yesterday. You got guys on that team, major contributors that are locked up for a little while. He's one of them. Go win multiple titles. That's the opportunity now in front of Jokic and his Nuggets team.
And you know what? They brought this up last night. They may have multiple titles today had Jamal Murray not hurt his knee.
You're right.
That was a huge point as to why they didn't feel like they succeeded at the level they should have a year ago. If they have Jamal Murray on that team, they believe they win the Larry O'Brien Trophy last year.
Well,
so
now it has started.
Yes.
This could open up the floodgate of championships for the Nuggets.
Under the radar, and also under the radar among owners, Stan Kroenke.
Oh, my goodness.
How about the run that he's been on with champions? He's got all these different titles. And, of course, he's the owner of the Los Angeles Rams. They win the Super Bowl. The Colorado Mammoth.
Didn't know it was a league.
Lacrosse.
Didn't know lacrosse had a league.
You know what? You know about them now because Stan Kroenke won a title, by God. Colorado Avalanche winning the championship in 2022, and now the Denver Nuggets for the first time ever winning the championship.
And if you ask Kroenke, he will say that Mammoth title is the most important of all 4 of these. I'm kidding. Stan Kroenke, it's impossible to argue with the results. He's the best owner in sports right now. Right now, given the recent results of what he's done in major sports, he's the best owner out there. What he's not the best at is knowing how a microphone works. Because that post-game interview with Lisa Salters last night was one of the more unintentionally hilarious things I've ever witnessed in a post-game interview where you are clearly addressing the arena. And because Stan Kroenke, it was like a Will Ferrell skit. Because Stan Kroenke couldn't understand that people could hear through the microphone that because he couldn't hear Lisa Salters' questions, he then answered the questions, and we're going to show you a picture, answered the questions into Lisa Salters' ear and away from the microphone, as if he thought Lisa Salters was doing an interview for the arena and for ABC ESPN with no microphone, just ear to ear, face to face. This is one of the biggest failures of understanding how a microphone, how audio works that I've ever seen from a billionaire in Stan Kroenke. So congratulations on all the championships. But next time you win a championship, you've had plenty of practice already. Please understand that when a microphone goes in front of your face and someone asks you a question, this is not the time to lean over and whisper into that person's ear while they're trying to get you on mic. That was hilarious to watch last night. Lisa Salters, like me, I was in my living room and able to laugh out loud. You could see the look in her face about to laugh at how absurd the situation was.
I would love to know what his favorite property is that he owns.
It's the Mammoth.
No
doubt.
Could be the Mammoth. He owns Ball Arena and the property there. He bought that out through the company that he founded. He's married to Ann Walton Kroenke, one of the heirs to the Walton throne with Walmart. Here are his teams: Rams, Nuggets, Avalanche, the Mammoth. Should have led with that. He also owns the Colorado Rapids, Arsenal FC, Arsenal
That's a good one.
WFC. He owns the Los Angeles Gladiators and the Los Angeles Gorillas. Both of those are esports, and they're also dominant.
All right.
But that's the new space that he's in, and he's got them all, and as well as the Paramount Theater. He owns the Paramount Theater in downtown Denver, the historic theater there. He went ahead and bought that too.
The man owns a little bit of everything in sports. He is a sports Goliath. Royce in the YouTube chat says, my vote is for the Saudis being the best owners in sports very soon.
Could be.
Could be.
Do the Saudis own Skycam? No, they don't. Skycam, the eye in the sky. Stan Kroenke owns Skycam.
Really?
Yes.
And what were the name of the esports teams again? The Gorillas?
The Gladiators and the Gorillas. Yep.
I'm willing to bet.
Stan Kroenke, eye in the sky.
You know, Truth Serum, Lisa Salter's ear in front of him, and he was going to whisper something to us or to her ear about what he covets the most and his favorite team to own. I am willing to bet, given all that he's gone through with this team, it is the Los Angeles Rams.
He also owns 19 hunting, fishing, and shooting magazines. He owns the Sportsman and Outdoor channels and the World Fishing Channel.
I didn't know he was such an outdoorsman.
He's not.
I bet it's the Rams for what he had to go through to get them out of St. Louis to L.A. and winning a title
all
there.
those owners who had to pay to help him leave St. Louis.
I mean, he's had to seek a lot of therapy to get through. You know, guys, I had to take the handout from all the owners that had to pay the lawsuit to St. Louis. I would say it's probably them, but who knows? Maybe Arsenal. That's got to be up there on the list.
No matter what, though, you know, Ann Walton Kroenke is the he'll never be able to surpass her in wealth.
What if Kroenke really thought that was an interview and he was just talking off the record with Lisa Salters, and he just leans over and when he whispers into her ear, he says, you know, this is like the 7th most favorite thing I own. This
is getting old.
I don't even care.
This is getting old.
Lisa, I don't care about this title as much as the Mammoths championship. I don't like basketball even. I pretend to like it.
I'm just here.
These Nuggets fan, I don't like them. They didn't care for years. They can have this, but I don't like it. What if he said that to her instead? That would be the secret we all want to know.
Maybe so. So many titles, so many ring ceremonies and parades. Denver will celebrate with their parade.
They're going to have a legitimate
Thursday.
banner to hang in their rafters after this championship.
Best championship celebration for Curt Schilling. We'll ask him that. Plus, a lot of discussion about pitch counts. Curt Schilling joins us next on Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number 1 pet peeve, telemarketers. Number 2 pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number 3 pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number 4 pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying, even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Glad you're with us across the OutKick network, which includes the YouTube channel. Over 1 million subscribers. You can be one of them. Hope to subscribe to the channel. Just search out OutKick. And from there, give us a thumbs up. Join us in the chat. And you can join all of the great programs and shows live or on demand. You can also catch Kurt Schilling, our next guest, the Kurt Schilling Baseball Show, available every Tuesday and Friday at OutKick.com. Always love our conversations with the great Kurt Schilling. Kurt, good to see you, man.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Hey, excellent. We were discussing the Nuggets winning the title last night and the parade that's coming up on Thursday. Your favorite World Series championship celebration was which one?
Oh, God, not even close. I mean, there was 3 or 4 million people in the streets of Boston in 2004. I mean, Arizona was personal because I grew up there, but Boston was, I think, the biggest ever.
And the best parties too. I'm assuming.
Oh, well, I mean, I won those. I was part of those in later in my life as a husband and a father. So there was always the season was over. So I remember in '01, we literally left the day after the World Series to go on a Disney cruise we had planned a year before because we planned it in November. No one plays baseball in November. Well, 9/11 happens, and we end up playing on November 5th. So, and then, but '04 I stuck around for, and that was, it was like a 4-hour Who concert, really. And then it was, the people jumping in the Charles River when it was 30 some degrees. It was insane.
Kurt Schilling with us. The reaction to the pitch counts in college baseball right now, Chad and I were mocking that as insane yesterday. But when you see, like I was telling Chad, I'm watching a little bit of the super regional coverage. And when I see a starter is in the game right now, Kurt, in the 7th inning, I'm thinking, man, this is jarring. I'm not seeing this at the major league level. And this is coming from a guy that really doesn't watch a whole lot of baseball compared to the way I did in the 90s and early 2000s. And now I'm almost conditioned for the relievers to be in the 5th or 6th inning. Meanwhile, the college guys they're rolling right on through, which tells me that Major League Baseball could do it as well.
Well, they could, but there's not. I don't know of any college player with a $340 million 10-year deal. And that's what's changed. The fact of the matter is they're investing these, tens of $20 and $30 million before these guys ever get to the big leagues. And you can't blame the pitchers because it's what they're doing to the kids in the minor leagues. They're not getting the innings. They're not stretching them out, and they're doing it on purpose because they're not going to do it in the big leagues. So, the 156 pitch game the other day, the Stanford kid, I said on my show the other day, one of the things I tell young pitchers is no one's ever going to care about your career as much as you will. And that includes coaches. And college is a business. It is a money-making business for some of these schools, Stanford especially. And those coaches, they don't give a lot of thought to some, not all of them obviously, but a lot of the coaches don't give a lot of thought to what a kid's going to do afterwards. They don't really care. Because they've got them for 2, 3, 4 years, and they're going to get every pitch they can out of them, and they'll move on. And so, you got to advocate for yourself. But I think as a coach too, I think part of your responsibility is to protect the player from himself. And I said this, Am I doing all right? My audio, I feel like my audio's down.
We
now.
hear you now.
We hear you now. You cut out for a sec. But
Okay. All right. Yep. No. Yep. Sorry. But early in my career, or early in Terry's managing career, I led the major leagues in what they had called pitcher abuse points, which wasn't a category you want to lead the big leagues in, but I did. And I did so because I threw a lot of innings, a lot of pitches. And that was how I was raised and conditioned. And going back and looking back now, it didn't help me. It wasn't good for me, but I wouldn't have changed anything. And Tito was trying to win games. It's his first job as a manager, and we're a horrible team. So, there's a lot of things that combine to come to that perfect storm in the big leagues that you can prepare a kid in the minor leagues to get ready for. I'm a firm believer in well, I know for a fact all pitches aren't created equal. I can throw 120 pitches in a 9-0 game and have it feel like 75 pitches in a 0-0 game. The level of effort needed is very different. I don't think as a pitcher you try and make that happen, but it is part of it. Absolutely.
So I'm a little odd in that I'm a big baseball fan. I love baseball, but I'm not the biggest college baseball fan. There's just always something that has felt a little bit small time to me. And it's weird because I like
bat.
It's the bat, but it's just something about the surround. Like there are parts of it and elements like I totally get. Like you get into the passionate super regional or watch the games in Omaha.
Yep.
And I can understand it, and the game is the game, right? But what do you think about college baseball when you watch it, Kurt? Is the bat that throws you off?
No. Here's the thing, and I would tell you, my guess would be the reason it doesn't have the appeal that big leagues baseball does is it's just not the same speed. Big league baseball is played at a speed that people cannot comprehend. When you watch Ozzie Smith turn a double play or You watch, guys do things in the big leagues. No one else in the world can do them at the speed that they do them with, and with the beauty and precision that they do them with. College is much more. There's a lot of extremely talented players, but there's maybe one or two guys on the field that might get drafted at any one time, so they may never make the big league. So you're not watching big league baseball, and I think that difference in speed is immense, and it's noticeable.
What would be the routine for you? And you were, again, a different stratosphere in overall talent and the ability to just finish games, and the speed at which you pitched. But what was it like getting back to the next start, health-wise, knowing that you led the pitchers in abuse points or whatever, but you still were back out there at the next scheduled start? Would the routine be different today than the way you handled it then?
No, it wouldn't have been. My method evolved and became an amalgam of probably 100 different pitchers or players or performers that I studied for preparation. What drove that for me back then would probably drive me today. I hated losing so much that in my mind, I wanted to do anything I could humanly do to make sure it never happened again. And so when I stepped out on the mound after 5 days, I stepped out on the mound with the confidence of, hey, listen, nobody's outworked me and outprepared me, so here we go. That's a level of that's a level of confidence. I'm stepping on the field with the best players in the world, and I'm thinking, hey, doesn't matter. Bonds is hitting third, so what? I'm still going to win.
But I see some of these, pitch counts, Kurt, and I think if Kurt Schilling was playing at LSU in 2023 and you're 19, 20, 21 years old, you're pitching 178 pitches if you can, because you're probably telling your coach, I need to be out here. I don't want to give this game up to someone else. That's part of the competitor, right?
Well, but also this pitch count stuff is relatively a new science, right? I mean, this is only 20, 30 years old in the sense that, Nolan Ryan threw 230 some pitches in a complete game. Guys threw 30 complete games a season. And I remember the one I remember vividly was like the early 70s Oakland A's. They had like 5 guys in their rotation. Billy Martin ran them through, and they had like 100 some complete games. But that was what you were brought up to do. Now these kids aren't doing that. They're not being taught that. They're not being, and you have to do it. You can't ask a kid who's thrown 150 innings at the most at his peak in his lifetime to suddenly go to the big leagues and throw 180, 200 innings. That's just not how it works. You can't ask guys to do things for the first time in the big leagues. And unfortunately, that's exactly what's happening, because you're seeing these guys get to I had like 600 innings in the minor leagues before I got to the big leagues. And I had thrown probably in the minor leagues 15 to 25 complete games. I had close to 200 inning seasons in the minor leagues. I did all those things before I got to the big leagues. I pitched in the 9th inning with the tying run on second base. It wasn't in Wrigley Field. It was in Elmira, New York, or some other place. But these kids are having to experience things and do things for the first time in the big leagues. And as a pitcher, that's just not a healthy way. It's not a healthy thing to do.
Kurt, I'm a Braves fan. I'm watching their game last night against the Detroit Tigers. Charlie Morton's got a great start. They're up 4-0 or 4-1 when he leaves the game, 4-0. They're up 5-2 going in the 9th. And Raisel Iglesias just blows it. He's got a terrible outing and gives up 3. The Braves end up losing in 10. And even knowing it's 1 of 162, I'm still bothered by it, seeing a bullpen come in and completely screw things up. I wanted to ask you the Major League Baseball starting pitcher vantage point of that when it happens to you. If you're Charlie Morton and you've got a great start and it happens, how hard is it maybe not to say something, but just what you're thinking as it happens?
Well, it's not hard to not say something. But I had the luxury of doing every role you could do in a pitching staff. I was a closer, I was a setup guy, I was a mop-up guy, middle guy, and I started. I know for a guaranteed bona fide fact that there is no worse feeling in the world than a closer who blows a save, because you have let down 24 guys and everybody in the stadium in a day when everybody was feeling good when you jogged on the field, and they feel like crap when they leave the stadium. It's the worst feeling in the world. And So that's, I mean, it's a starter. You know what? Yeah, it's frustrating, but it's your teammate. So there's not, with rare exception, you don't ever, there's no animosity. But that's also one of the things that they say in baseball. All losses are not created equal, and they're not. Late inning losses are painful, and those are the things that can bury a team if you don't have a good manager, you don't have good leadership in the clubhouse, because those things can linger.
Kurt Schilling with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. We know how you feel about Jacob deGrom. What were you thinking when you learned that he was having Tommy John for a second time in his career?
You know what? It's one of those situations you don't ever want to be in an "I told you so" position. But I said when the contract happened, I had a bet. I actually placed a futures bet, and I took the under 20 starts. I just didn't. There's nothing that should. And again, I love this guy, and I think, honest to God, I would tell you that he might be one of the 2 or 3 most dominating pitchers in the history of the game when he was healthy. Not just in his generation, but ever. The stuff that he did was I've never seen before. And I was very proud of my command. And I was a guy who, I think in 2002, I went into September with 19 wins and 18 walks. And so I didn't walk people. But he's doing the things that I did, but he's doing it at 101 miles an hour with 3 wipeout pitches that I never came close to having. He's, in my opinion, he's as close to Pedro at his peak than anybody I've ever seen.
And again, I don't
Devastated,
know.
Though.
Is that? Do you think because he does all of that with his arm that it led to more injury-like stuff, or is it just unfortunate?
No. Well, first off, the human body is not built to throw baseball.
Right.
It is a very unconventional and unorthodox thing. And if you talk to people, and this was one of the things I studied when I played. I studied not medicine, but I studied the arm and the body. And I said in my show the other day, I sat in on an autopsy early in my career of a human cadaver and got to look at the inside of the human shoulder and understand all the moving pieces and parts and what they look like and how they functioned and moved with each other. And the fact of the matter, it's a very simple thing. Not everybody's body is built the same. Yeah, I clearly had great collagen. My body healed fast. My connective tissues were better than other people's, and they have to be. When you think about the fact that the arm's moving thousands of milliseconds, thousands of degrees a second, it's not conventional. And Jacob was one of the challenging parts. He's a very max effort guy, so there was Greg Maddux, in my opinion, threw 2 to 3, 4 miles an hour softer than he could have thrown his entire career, to command and have precision, but also for health. And not a lot of guys can do that. In fact, for the most part, everybody in baseball has turned into a max effort guy because they've fallen so in love with velocity. And that's why there's fewer pitchers and a lot more throwers in the game today.
So the Braves-Mets broadcast from the Braves standpoint last Thursday featured John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, Chipper Jones, and Jeff Francoeur, 4 former players, no play-by-play guy. And they alternated innings doing a little bit of play-by-play, but just telling stories and having fun. It helped that the game turned out to be a 13-10 walk-off extra inning win.
Right.
The Braves came back and won, but it was so much fun, Kurt. And I wanted to ask you, how much fun would you have doing a broadcast like that without a play-by-play guy and just former players of a team? And when do you think a team out there is going to watch this and think, maybe this is the route for our broadcast moving forward for 162 games?
So a couple things. First off, if I was to do it in the group that I would do it with, there would have to be somebody on that little panic button thing, because the story. Well, I mean the story, and that's the fun, right? I always said when I was in the booth, you guys don't want to hear the fact that Shohei Ohtani has a 2.38 ERA and he's this, that everybody knows that. You guys want to hear what's actually being said between the pitcher and catcher when they're on the mound. You want to hear what's going on in the dugout and all the stupid, goofy stories that happen.
1,000%, yes.
Because, oh my God. Well, listen, I think baseball mic'd up in spring training is the best thing that's ever happened. And how that isn't an everyday thing for every team now is mind-boggling to me, because I think it would be fascinating to be able to sit in and listen to Mookie Betts for 9 innings, and talk to him and things like that. But I would have a blast because I would pick. I mean, I would have Doug Mirabelli would be one of the guys. It would just be fun. It would be 9 innings of laughing, and you'd understand how players got through a 162 game schedule.
Well, and NFL has Hard Knocks where they behind the scenes. I think that would be great if Major League Baseball would just open up a clubhouse. Now, you have to be picky on which one. Again, not everyone would want to do it, but there are players.
It's not going to happen.
There are players now in the middle of a regular season game that will be mic'd up for an inning.
Yep.
And that's nerve-wracking for me. I'm thinking the ball's about to come to him. I would, as a pitcher, I wouldn't want my second baseman mic'd up or my right fielder mic'd up.
As long as it didn't impact, if I knew the guy, I mean, it wouldn't impact the game. But the whole Hard Knocks thing for baseball, I think that stuff's going to get less and less with the woke culture that we're in now. The clubhouse is it's a disgusting place. I mean, the clubhouse is. I always say the Major League clubhouse is like being in college at a fraternity without having to go to class and getting paid millions of dollars. I mean, it is the most. The debauchery and the stuff that we say to each other and the things that we do, because nothing's off limits. That's where we relax. That's how you get through the grind. We say and do some outlandish things. And you know what, fans, there are fans that probably would walk away from the game if they knew some of the idiotic things that we say and do in the clubhouse. But we're still boys. That's the thing we're boys at heart playing a man's game.
I think fans would come back even more. I'm going to tune in even more. And the other comparison, I like the comparison of the clubhouse in college, just less ramen as well, is what I would also say about the clubhouse to college.
Better spread.
Yeah. Yes. Which team had the best spread, by the way?
Well, that's changed too.
Oh, really?
That's changed too, because right as I was going out of the game, they started bringing these chefs in, and they started there was not a healthy calorie in the clubhouse before the post-game spread. I mean, it was gum and candy and chips and cereal, whatever. And then they started getting on this health craze, and they started pulling that stuff out and bringing in the Gabe Kapler food, right? You could eat 5 pounds of it and gain 3 ounces and shred body fat. It was so then we'd have the clubhouse guys go get us stuff. And that was, then you had the chicken and beer Red Sox in 2013 that ended all that.
How many guys would just go behind the scenes to grab a cigarette or a chew whenever they tried to outlaw all that?
Oh, everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody. That's not, you know what? That's one of the things. I remember when I was a kid, I saw Dave Parker in Sports Illustrated smoking a cigarette, and I was like, it blew me away. It was like terrifying to me. And I remember, that has gotten to be less of a thing. The guy that smokes in the club, it's rare. Mm-hmm. And now I would imagine it's incredibly unique, and which is a good thing. The dip is still probably a prevalent thing and a very big deal. But I mean, we made our lives. We got to the big leagues not having to follow anybody else's rules. So what makes them think we're going to start following rules now? Yeah, and Chad and I have discussed this over the last couple of years, because when Bauer was actually allowed to play in Major League Baseball, he had that vlog. Some teammates were okay with it, and a lot of them hated it. And you could tell. And I think that goes to the overriding theme of what you're saying is, hey, man, what happens in here is a fraternity. Get the camera and turn it off. Yeah. Well, but he was a different case. He was kind of he was, I want to say dick, but he was. And it's clear he wasn't a good teammate. He wasn't. I mean, he's a dummy. He's clearly an exceptional talent, but some of the stuff that he did, he doesn't have common sense is severely lacking in that kid, and that's he's paid for it. Kurt Schilling, check out the Kurt Schilling Baseball Show, available now every Tuesday and Friday at OutKick.com. Kurt, always great, man. We love whenever you're joining us on these weeks, and I appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll be checking out the podcast again on Friday. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Kurt.
There's Kurt Schilling. I love the behind-the-scenes stories he's referencing there.
And he's right. When I'm watching a baseball broadcast, I don't want stats being thrown at me. I do like when they can get into stories, or here's what you're thinking in this situation. Here's what the manager's looking at. I love little bits of the game like that. And then when you get a blowout, you get into some really good, pastime stories from the players. And you got a lot of that in that Braves broadcast. Yep. Kurt, we mentioned he's got the Kurt Schilling Baseball Show at OutKick. Here is an example. He's discussing the college pitcher and the coaches that are focused on winning and not necessarily the pitch counts at the college level.
He's pitching down 1-0 with a season on the line. He throws 156 pitches, and they win. And then Guru, and I'm using air quotes, Guru Keith Law. The last major league starter to throw 135 or more in one game was Tim Lincecum, his 2013 no-hitter. Edwin Jackson in 2010 did it. Brandon Morrow. Last guy to throw 156 pitches in a game was 1997 Tim Wakefield, who's a knuckleballer. So his 156, for the most part, was kind of like somebody else throwing 62 pitches because the knuckleball wasn't something that took out of your arm. The last non-knuckleballer to do it was, surprise, surprise, Roger Clemens in 1996. Fans were tweeting things like, "This is absurd. Somewhere a Tommy John surgeon has bought himself a Rolex. 156. Are they trying to kill him?" Let's be clear. Matthews was drafted last year. He's 119th prospect on the Major League Baseball list. Couple things. First off, hats off to the kid for being that guy who wants the ball, who wants to be on the mound, who wants to grind and get through it. And to the people that wonder about this, this is obviously not all inclusive, but college coaches, for the most part, don't give two craps about the future prospects of a player they have. College baseball is a business, and their job is to win games. And nowadays, you're seeing college coaches move into the pro ranks. You know, you don't move into the pro ranks. You don't get promoted. You don't get a raise if you're not in the regionals, if you're not playing at the College World Series, regardless of what level you're at. Insanely irresponsible thing to do. Insane. Ridiculous. I don't even know who the manager is. I didn't even look it up because I didn't want to know his name because I didn't want to call him out personally like that. But ridiculous. Insane, irresponsible. It gets back to what I said earlier in my career. No one is ever going to care more about your career than you. No doctor, no trainer, no coach, nobody but you and your family. No one's going to care about your career as much as you, and you have to take control of some things.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick, the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Sixth and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. OutKick Network includes all the great shows that you can check out at our YouTube page. And just search out OutKick. We hope you subscribe there.
Smash the like button.
Join us in the chat.
A lot of people did today. Continue to smash it.
Right. Check out the Kurt Schilling Baseball Show today. Always smashes it with us whenever he joins us. Great stories there and a recall of parades and the river being 30
Got
degrees.
into the bygone era when athletes smoked today.
Yeah.
It's not something you see as much
Oh,
of
now
today.
it's vaping.
I don't know how many athletes vape, though.
I guarantee you a lot of the college players do.
Probably.
They're hiding the vapes.
I do think that it's probably very few and far between that a pro athlete would smoke a cigarette, like Kurt told us.
Smoking a cigarette, yeah.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah. Few and far between that could survive in the Amazon for 40 days. 4 kids did it.
Not me.
Including an 11-month-old. The ages, just to update the story from yesterday, 13, 9, 4, and 1. Those are the kids' ages that were lost for 40 days. They found the plane 16 days after it crashed in the Amazon. They're found alive in in Colombia, and 3 of the adults that were in the plane were with the wreckage dead. And they figured, hey, maybe these kids are alive somewhere. Turns out they were. And the update to the story is how they survived. We didn't know the details of it. They would have food dropped in. They had a loudspeaker with their grandmother's voice playing that asked them to stay put wherever they were because they thought they were within a 3-mile radius, and they were. It was just so dense. It took that long to search that 3-mile radius. But Chad, the update through Fox News is they hid in tree trunks to protect themselves from snakes, animals, and mosquitoes that were just in the jungle. And you mentioned this, and this is where I thought of like, I'd be dead in a day. They had a very good familiarity with the rainforest fruits that were
edible.
That's where I would die. I would eat something poisonous immediately. I would eat from the tree of life, or the tree of good and evil, and perish in the rainforest.
They also ate some sort of fruit or a plant that created a flower that they subsisted on for a while. I read.
Yeah, nuts, craziness, and then they foraged for supplies. But that's like the 13-year-old doing that with a 9 and a 4-year-old also caring for an 11-month-old.
Yeah, the 13-year-old was essentially able to keep everyone else alive, including an 11-month-old baby.
Jed, the fail of the week, Big Cat from Barstool said he couldn't stop watching this video. This is like a entertainment at a South American soccer match, and there's this guy.
Obstacle course. It's a little American Gladiator.
American Gladiator style obstacle course, and
American Ninja
Davey
Warrior,
Hudson
maybe,
sent this
more
to
of
us.
that.
Yeah, it's very similar to that, except he's running and trying to do stuff, but it's an automatic fail. Davey is like, how embarrassing is this for this guy? I look at this. First thought is because he's overweight. He's what, 45 to 50 years old. How many pounds are we talking here?
Yeah, he's probably 300. He doesn't look that tall, so he's probably about 300 pounds.
So, he's trying to go up little obstacle courses. He's now going to go up with American Gladiator
huge
style.
other than just a huge belly.
Very out of shape.
This man.
So I immediately thought of, this is not legit. This is for, the laugh. And I think Davey's like, it's very embarrassing because he can't accomplish anything. I think this is more like Guillermo on the Jimmy Kimmel show than anything else. Legit. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. But, he can't do anything, and it's gimmicked at the end that he knocks down the wrestler that's in a luchador mask onto the mat.
Yeah, this may be at work.
And
the drop at the end.
The belly flop and everything
else.
else.
He's probably like a TV star.
He's probably a wrestler.
Or something down in South America.
But it's a great gimmick idea for a halftime bit.
No, it's a really good bit.
I would like to see more people step up and just be the clown of entertainment.
Look, this is
enough dog sketching frisbees.
Long-held truth in comedy. Fat people are funny. They just are. There are many fat actors and comics.
They used to be kings.
That have just, when they decided to lose weight, they became less funny. And many didn't want to lose the weight because they thought they'd be less funny.
Henry VIII
and
was
in
in
fact,
power
they were
for his
less
weight.
funny.
And today he'd be a halftime gimmick.
Yep. Fat is funny.
Back at it tomorrow. Dan Dockich and Clay Travis on the Wednesday edition. Hope you'll join us. We start at 3 o'clock Eastern for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.